out your busy schedules to come out and join us this evening. We want to make sure that we give us ample time, so we'll be going over some things to let you know where we are in the city in terms of where the project stands. I'm going to introduce some very valuable members of my team, and then I am going to have it pivot to Microsoft, and I want to thank them and all their members of their team for being here today and having an opportunity to sit down and talk to you all and engage on where we're at with the project. That to us is very, very important. And so what I want to do first, start out with the introductions. First, I got to recognize my council members who are here. Councilmember Joshua Butler, Ward D, council member. Councilmember Josette Daly, where's video? Council Bailey. Councilmember Lance Robinson is there as well. So, and I will introduce the others as they arrive, and our mayor as well. We are on their arrival. All right, so now I'm going to turn my attention to the team. And what I want to start out by doing is having my team, come on. And what I'm going to do is I want to introduce them to you. And from each area of our city, they're going to describe where we are in the city process as it relates to this project. Well, come on, you are part of the team. All right, so everybody here on this team has some role they play in our project, in our permitting process, in our application process. And we have a lot more who are here, but for the sake of time, we limited to this illustrious group that we have here before you. So first I'm going to start out with my election department director, Mr. Sean Dow. Mr. Sean Dow oversees all operations for anything that's related to our election department. He's been with us now for about 6 years or so, is that right, Sean? And so now, he's not really involved in the permitting process right now, but he is here as our subject matter expert. So if you see anything related to power on our side, there's expertise on the Microsoft side, and this is ours on our side as well. So there's going to be a lot of information I'll share with you all here. So, all right, so that's Sean. All right, now what I'm going to do is I introduce them. I'm going to have them come up one at a time and talk about where we are and what the phase of the project that they're involved in. And so first I've got our water and sewer director, Ms. Melissa Echeverria. Melissa had been with us for a while, had a brief stint, then left and came back, and I'm so happy to have her back. I can't say how much I know, and I know our whole city feels the same way. And so I'm going to have her talk about her process. Then we're going to go from Melissa, and she introduced her team as well, and what their role is, Razor, and also Richard. And then we'll go to planning, the department. Our planning director is Kimberly Smith. Raise your hand, Kimberly. Taylor there as well, who's a valuable partner with us. And we got Chief Hill, and we got Chief Kendrick there as well, from the fire department as well. And so this is just a microcosm of our entire team, but they're all involved with what's going on today. And so I've asked them to be a part of this right now. So we're going to pivot now. I'm going to give it to Melissa, who's going to talk about where she is in her phase of the project, the issue that impacted her in Microsoft. And I got to give Microsoft all the credit in the world. I'm going to introduce them once they've finished, and I'm going to bring up their illustrious team as well. I'm going to start with Mr. LeBrier, the Hope, the state government manager for her office and the state, and then all of her team, and then she'll introduce them as well. But I got to give them credit as well because they've been here and wanting to work with us in this whole process. All right, so we'll start with Melissa and go from there. All right.
Good evening, everyone. I have here our floodplain stormwater engineer, which is Reza Arab, and then also Richard Randolph, which is our city engineer. In water and resources, what we're looking for is, at this point in time, is with the blasting permit to ensure that the city's water main that's near the property and also the sewer line that's near the blasting site is not compromised during that blasting process. So we have an 18-inch reinforced concrete pipe that's near the blasting site. During the pre-blasting phase, we required Microsoft to provide us information concerning that line. We're not using our resources. They have to use their resources to determine if the line is intact and in good shape. There were some issues with that line. It has some cracks, some roof intrusion. And since we're not confident that the line can handle the blasting, we are negotiating with Microsoft and the team for them to handle that in the event that that blast does impact that sewer line, and they are fully responsible for that sewer line. The The other issue that we have with stormwater, we manage the land service permit. So in this process, we do not send, let me back up. The city of East Point is a local issuing authority. That means we've adopted the Georgia Erosion Sediment Control Act ordinance. However, we do not have an MOA. That means we do not review those plans in-house. The state reviews those plans for us. What they approve on those plans, the Water Resources, Stormwater Division staff goes out to the site to ensure those BMPs, which are best management practices, are in place. I know during the last meeting we had some concerns with dust control. We have a new inspector. He's really good. He came from the city of Nevada code enforcement. He's on site practically every day. He's making sure that we're minimizing erosion and sedimentation from the construction site. So in an event that any residents have any issues, you can contact us. I'll leave some of my cards here. And also, you can also reach us at the water_sewer, eastpointcity.org. And that email goes to everybody in my department, and I monitor that email address 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So if you have any issues, let us know, and we'll go out to the site and see if we can rectify or remedy any issues on site.
Okay, well, this next up is Kimberly Smith, our Planning and Development Director. And come on, Taylor, both of you and they'll tell about their process, what's been involved, where we are today, and then we'll
Kimberly Smith, the Director of Planning and Community Development. I've been with the city for about 5 years. Coming in this June. This is my associate planner, Ms. Taylor Solomon. To call in, you may get her. She does all her zoning letters. But in reference to Microsoft and Kimberly, can I hear you? Oh, you can't hear me? Okay, let me project. Kimberly Smith, the Planning and Community Development Director. And so in reference to this project and where we are with this project as far as planning and community development is concerned, right now there are 2 parcels that are associated with the larger piece, which is about 130 acres or so. There are 2 smaller parcels that are associated with that. And those 2 parcels were rezoned last July. Based on the conditions that were placed on that rezoning for those 2 parcels, the address is 4165 Ben Hill and 4155 Ben Hill Road. Based on the conditions of those rezoning, the rezoning was from residential limited, which is a RL zoning district classification, which is a single family zoning classification. It was rezoned from RL zoning district to I1. That was approved to the I1 zoning district. However, there were multiple conditions placed on that zoning, and one of those conditions stated if this project does not pull a building permit by a certain period in time, deadline was, I want to say, July 7th, 2022, then the council has the opportunity or had the option to revert that property back to the residential limited zoning district. Don't want to get into too many specifics because our zoning ordinance has its quirks. Long story short, we've gone through that reversion process. We've had our community zoning information meeting. It started in October. We have gone through the planning commission. Our planning commission has 2 steps. It has a planning commission work session, which was held in November, and we also had the public hearing for our planning commission, which was also held in November, the 3rd Thursday of November. But just this last Monday, it went to the city council work session, and that meeting was this past Monday. So where a decision can be made as to whether those 2 parcels are going to be rezoned from the I-1, which was granted in July of 2021, back to the residential, that decision could potentially be made by city council on this Monday. It's this upcoming Monday. Yes, you guys.
So, question. So you said that it was an option to go back. What triggered the decision to go back?
The condition that was placed on the property when the rezoning was granted.
Oh, so it triggered once that they came up?
Yes.
If you don't, no, you go ahead, please. Which property was that?
It's the two residential properties that are on Finn Hill. The address is 4165 and 4155. One of those parcels is about 1 acre in size, and the other
So
one is
that's,
about 6.
Is that, that 06, that is a, is that a property also of yours? I mean, are those two, those last two buildings, are those the ones you're talking about?
Right here.
They're right there.
This is,
All those two houses?
so
Okay.
they're
Okay.
vacant in Clarksville, is that correct?
The site is vacant.
Yeah.
Maybe.
That, right there. Okay.
So
That's where they were going to put the electrical building.
I would be able to answer that question, and that would be the third thing that I wanted to talk about. Our department, Planning and Community Development Department, also oversees the building permit and plan review process. And based on the building permit application, we have it in-house, but it has yet to be paid for. So what triggers our staff to send it through the plan review process, where all of these lovely people behind me start reviewing it for their different expertises, is the payment. And unfortunately, we have not received that payment yet, so it has not started that plan review process where we would know for sure where buildings are going to go, where the proposed substation is going to go. We officially have not received a site plan where we would be able to analyze it, review it, and make a determination on whether we would actually issue a permit, a building permit.
So, I'm trying to comprehend what you're saying. Does that mean, now that it's going to the council for the work session, is there a guarantee that it will or will not pass? And what happens if you could just do a brief summary of what if it is not, if it is passed?
So-
What is the status?
So the options for the reversion, one of the options for the reversion, if council chooses to approve the reversion, then that would mean the substation would not be allowed. If that makes sense. So, if council chose to approve the reversion that's going to be before them on Monday, there is a possibility that a substation could actually go there. So let me be clear. Let me say that again. If council chose to approve the reversion application that's before them to change the property from I-1 light industrial zoning district back to the residential limited, there could be an opportunity for a substation to be allowed. The way that it could be allowed is through an administrative approval application. And there are several different requirements that the application would have to adhere to in order for that to happen. If you want more information, details specifically, you can call our office. We also, our meetings are recorded. We went over that very detail oriented. We read it specifically into the record. All of our meetings are recorded. You could go to the city's website and look up the meeting from last week to find out the specific details of each option. We gave options of if council chooses to approve, they take action to approve it, then possibly a substation could go on there if certain parameters, requirements were met. If council chose to deny the reversion back to the residential, then the property would stay I-1, which does not allow substations by ordinance.
I-1 or RL?
It's I-1, and I know it sounds like it's in reverse, but
If it remains,
if it remains
reverses-
I-1, a substation would not be allowed or permitted per our ordinance.
so the that's confusing.
It's confusing because it seems like it's in reverse.
It does.
It seems like it's in reverse, but that's how the city ordinance is written. So we want to be clear to you all that you understand when action is taken, that you understand what actions are actually being taken.
So I have a couple of questions. So the RL, isn't that the residential limited?
Yes,
And I-1, I'm just deducing.
that's light
The
industrial.
light industrial, okay. So it was originally RL, right?
Correct.
And then there was a reversion, it was rezoned.
It was rezoned.
It was rezoned to
I-1,
I-1,
yes.
okay. And you're saying if it remains I-1, which it is now currently, but contingently, based on the meeting by council Monday and their decision, if it remains I-1, then a substation would not be permitted.
It would not be permitted on those two pieces of
Those
property.
parcels, right?
Correct.
And if it is reverted to residential?
It could potentially be used as a substation if an administrative approval permit is submitted and it is reviewed and approved pursuant to each and every requirement under the administrative approval process.
So as it stands, there's a condition that has not been met as of July 22, right? Which now leaves it at a contingency for
Reversion.
right? So what was the condition that was not satisfied?
A building permit was not pulled
The building-
within a year of the approval.
Okay.
And initially, it was an RL.
Correct.
So,
And
then-
we're talking about 7 acres of a larger piece.
Right.
of-
Now, I'm just trying to figure out, like she is, like, these properties were already RL, then they were zoned I-1,
Yes,
which makes it not available to put, right? So during this time that they were trying to get the permit until July, as of, until, was it June or July 22nd? One of those two,
it's
right?
July.
July. So before, let's say July 21st, that was an I-1 or an RL zone?
It's been zoned I-1 since July 2021.
So that was because of the condition.
The condition was just that. It was a condition of the approved rezoning from RL to I-1.
Because they didn't meet the zone, the permit.
This happened in steps. They submitted an application to rezone the property from residential limited to I-1. It was approved. It was approved with conditions. So the time frame went by, that condition came up that had a time frame on it of 12 months. The condition was if a building permit was not pulled by that date,
Okay.
then a revision could initiate,
Could. It
could,
wasn't mandatory.
right.
So what triggered whoever decision maker to execute the option? What was
The
the
actual trigger is not really here nor there. The actual trigger is the ordinance that was approved by council that triggered it.
No, I get it.
So the trigger and the action, whether you could or you can't, is going to be taken on Monday by council. Because the council can revert it or they cannot revert it. They don't have to.
But somebody decided to bring it up to a vote, which means they exercised the option. So the point is, the question is, who and why decided to exercise the option to try to do the vote for reversion?
Based on our legal opinions that we received, once that ordinance was signed back in July of 2021, that was already the initiation process to enact every single condition that was placed in that ordinance.
Okay.
It
Is
was
there
already
legal-
set forth.
Is that legal opinion available, just like the meetings of the council?
Not this evening.
Excuse me?
Not this evening. Our legal counsel is not here.
No, I just wondered if that decision, that deliberation is available to be read.
To be read, yeah, we have it.
The legal decision, the legal recommendation, why? That's what I'm.
And it's just that an opinion, I mean, it's a legal opinion.
Yes, so is that available to be read, the legal opinion?
We could, I mean, if you ask for it, open records, we could, yeah.
Oh, it's a question, I'm just asking.
Yes, and I'm answering. Is it available? Yes.
The building permit that wasn't secured, is it exclusively for those two parcels?
The building permit is for the entire site.
So the building that's taking place, now,
this is genuine
Yes,
curiosity. The building that has already been taken place has occurred without the building permit being pulled?
no building permits have been pulled. What has been pulled so far is just land disturbance.
Okay,
So there has been no permission to put any buildings anywhere on the site, on the little site, the 7-acre site, or the larger 100-acre site.
got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any more questions for the planning director? Take it. All right, well, she'll be here. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm not sure if for you or just in general. So after Monday, will we be able to find out what the results are?
Oh, absolutely.
And how is the city, is it going to be another meeting or email, or how do you know what the plans are to share?
To share the information, the results of the meetings, they're recorded.
Oh,
Yeah.
I have one more question.
Yes.
I'm sorry. So I think I understood that you said you have paperwork for the building permit, but there's been no payment associated with that building permit.
That is
request.
correct.
And so therefore, the permit review process has not been initiated because you're waiting on payment. So has there been an attempt by Microsoft, is it Microsoft who you're waiting for payment from? Has there been an attempt of them to make the payment to alleviate the consideration for reversion?
Not to my knowledge.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Tim. Appreciate you both. All right, so that's fine with me. We'll still be here if we have any further questions. Now I've got my fire team up here, Chief Hill and Chief Kendrick, and I want them to talk about what their role is in the process and, go from there. Go ahead.
Okay, Chief Kendrick, East Point Fire, 35 years, I'm battalion chief. I deal with everything internal and external. So come in the fire department, go out, it's gonna make its way in one way or another.
And I'm Chief Hill. I'm the Assistant Fire Marshal for the City of East Point. I've been with the city for 17 years.
So the fire department issued a blasting permit. That blasting permit has been placed on hold by water and sewer. Once that blasting permit is either lifted or whatever the water and sewer department does, it'll make its way back to the fire department. Microsoft cannot blast without fire department being on site, and that's from start to finish. That's any blasting in the city. So you absolutely cannot blast without it being on site. In addition to that, we received complaints that Microsoft had started blasting. We came out, investigated, and found out that no blasting had begun. And that's where we are from the fire department standpoint. I see everybody that spoke kind of long, but kind of short. We didn't have much to give. And that's where we are.
Any questions for these guys? They'll still be here. Any questions? All right, so thank you guys. Appreciate you all so much. Thank you guys. All right. And Melissa wanted to introduce one new member of the team before we move to pivot on with our meeting.
This is Anderson Thomas. He's the Senior Environmental Inspector that will be in charge of monitoring the site during the LDP process for erosion sedimentation. Make sure that we don't have any sediment entering the creek, we don't have major erosion problems, we're not dealing with a lot of dust control problems. He's going to go to his vehicle and put some cars out at the table. And again, you can reach me anytime. I monitor my email and my phone all the time. Yes, ma'am.
In regard to the blasting complications, I think you said there was some roof intrusion.
Yes, so
right?
Roots
So-
and yes.
Okay, so I'm interested, I'm sure other community members are interested in knowing how does those complications potentially impact the residents? If there's any adverse results from some unsuccessful blasting and piping is disrupted, how are we going to be impacted, if at all?
So the line itself there's roots in every line.
Right.
Okay, and we do root control in the city. So we do have a maintenance program for our sewer system. And we also, with the help of residents passing the municipal option sales tax, we are about to start replacing our water mains and our sewer lines in the city, as well as we have in our reservoirs. So in terms of the roots, they exist. The line itself is not impeding the flow to residents. What I can't determine or take responsibility for as the water resources director, in the event the blast occurs and it is damaged, I will not use residents' taxpayers' money to repair it. That is on Microsoft. The line is not perfect, but it is intact, and the sewer is completely flowing and doing what it needs to do currently for the residents on that area. But I cannot accept responsibility because I do not know if the blast is going to impact it, but if it it does, Microsoft will have to replace that line.
So I guess I'm asking your expert opinion on the potential adverse impact. I know you don't know for certain, but let's say hypothetically, the line is disrupted. How does that potentially impact the residents?
Okay, so impact, oh well, it has negative environmental impacts because it just is human waste. It can possibly get into our storm drains and it can possibly enter our waterways.
Thank you.
Now, what the resources department does, that is what we manage. I would like to say that we're kind of out of sight, out of mind. Our job is to deal with the Georgia Environmental Protection Division. Our job is to make sure that we are meeting all the regulations and protecting our residents. That's what we're here to do. Richard's been an engineer probably 40 years, the same for Reza. And like I said, I've been in the city since 2011. My expertise is environmental compliance. I have a bachelor's of environmental science and I also have a master's as well. That's what I stood to do and what I know how to do. So again, we've explained this to them. We've explained our expectations. If there is a problem with that line, we do have our sewer line crew that will be on site. And we will go ahead and have pumps ready in the event that it does happen. So we're full aware of it. We can't impede what they need to do as long as they're willing to meet what we need to protect the residents and our sewer lines.
Thank you.
All right.
Excuse me. How do you know how often are the streams and so forth checked to make sure that there's no sewage in the line?
So we
How do you know?
Well, currently we actually have upwards to 27 sewer flow monitoring. I welcome residents to take part in workshops. Every workshop I am getting work done in the city versus our capital improvement and things that we're trying to do to improve our services to you. So what we do, we have what they call sewer flow monitors. And those sewer flow monitors, when it drops below a certain threshold, it actually sends alarms to me, our engineers, and our sewer crew. And they respond to those calls 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
This is a technical field.
Yeah, it's pretty much it's an alarm system that we put in the manholes, and it sends us alarms. So if there's a blockage, we get that alert, and our on-call crew responds to it. We're trying to do the same thing for water now at the next work session, but again, the goal is for us to be more proactive in our approach. But we do have leak detections, and we also have sewer flow monitor detectors on those lines. Now, I would say, because that area is iffy with the trees, some lines are not readily accessible, but we still will get the alarm. It may just take us some time to get our equipment and our people on it, depending on where the line is at and how deep it is into the creek or waterway.
I got a question for the gentleman. Are they not using East Point Electric?
No, right now, no, we're not using it right now. They want to be Georgia Power, from the electric provider.
Good.
Yes, sir.
Has Microsoft shared their plan or put forward a plan on what they're going to do to make sure that they don't cause any sort of adverse impacts that we discussed? They shared their plan?
They have, and you know what, I'm going to have them next to do just that, give you an update, because it is a process that we're in. This is going to be an update of where they are in that process. So,
I can answer some of that. Okay, so again, we do not review the plans in-house. The Georgia Soil Water Conservation Commission, and more specifically the Fulton County Soil Water Conservation District, reviews those plans for environmental compliance. So they approve the best management practices like the silt fence, the CO, dust control, how they should stabilize the site, how they should phase the site to minimize those environmental impacts. So they met those requirements from the state of Georgia. Like I said, we don't approve, we just enforce those BMPs and the approved plans set forth by that. And another reason why vote isn't important, so this past election, the Fulton County Soil Water District supervisor was on there. So you may not realize that they do have a component in decision making to land development in the city of East Point and reviewing and approving those plans. So definitely get active with your Fulton County Soil Water District supervisors. And if you reach out to me, I can tell you who they are and how to locate them. Again, they're public servants through the Georgia. Some of them are appointed and some are elected by the government. But they take part in the election process.
So you all don't review the plan, but they have put forward a plan that has been vetted
Right.
and reviewed by.
Right. We review water lines, sewer lines, stormwater lines, but erosion and sedimentation and environmental and having a stormwater pollution prevention plan, that is what the district reviews for us. We just provide enforcement. So they've met every requirement as far as protecting the waterways and our storm drains. The question is whether or not when we go on site, have they implemented those? And Mr. Anderson's job is to make sure that everything that was approved by the state of Georgia is on site and is being maintained properly.
Sir, did they give a reason why they're not using East Point Power?
No, we don't have specific details of that. They can have the choice load because of the size of the development. And so they have will have the choice of who they want to have provide their electric service. But no, we have any details.
I apologize, but I have to be sincere. I'm still trying to wrap my mind around the intelligence with this residential and industrial life. Why is the meeting or the practical meeting inverted? It doesn't make sense to me. If it was residential and then it was rezoned to industrial, I'm just using my common knowledge, not any other intelligence. But industrial would mean that they can put an industrial structure there. And residential would mean that they wouldn't be permitted to put it there. So, but this ordinance is saying that because it is now, if it is reverted back to residential, they can put an industrial structure there. But if it stands as it is under the rezoning as an industrial structure, they cannot. That makes absolutely no sense to me, and I hope someone in the room can really enlighten us, because it sounds very counterintuitive to me.
On top of that, can you tell us when was that ordinance passed?
We would love to enlighten you, and I want to say, I know for myself, my staff, and I want to say for Darren as well, the current zoning ordinance, that was put in place prior to any of us being here. I would not be able to explain why you could put a substation in residential under certain circumstances and administrative approval. It doesn't make sense to us either, but as it's written, we have to apply it, we have to analyze it, we have to interpret it as it is.
So no one in the position of authority to ask questions about it?
You can ask questions, I just can't tell you
Wait,
why
no,
it's so.
I'm not asking, can I ask questions? I
Okay.
know I can ask questions.
Yes.
That's why I'm raising my hand and I'm here, because I have concerns. But I'm just trying to understand that the people that we've entrusted in leadership who are supposed to advocate for the community interest, if I'm just a common citizen who's not nearly as experienced as you all in managing a city, if I can agree that that doesn't make sense, and you all are far more experienced than we are, the people who were in the room at the tables who were aware of this ordinance going into effect, did they not counter and ask questions as to why it was kind of counterintuitive? No one addressed that? That's what I'm concerned about.
Not that I'm aware.
One of the things that she has on the task, she's doing a review of all the zoning ordinances right now. She's already got a consultant on board to do just what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I can totally understand what you're doing. Well,
My
I can say-
concern is that it's misleading, because if there are people who legitimately were advocating for rezoning for their interest in keeping that property residential, were advocating for that, they don't understand that they're advocating for the adverse. They were advocating and taking efforts towards the opposite of their efforts. Am I making sense?
You're making a
Am
lot
I
of
the one that's not
sense.
making sense?
You're
Okay.
making a lot of sense.
And I know, because I do know there were a lot of people who were taking effort, initiatives to have it reverted. And they don't know that they're supporting something that they're actually opposed to.
I agree.
And it's misleading, and that is a problem.
But we're gonna vote on it.
Because when it's residential,
We're gonna- that's one reason.
Residential, you would think residential, a residence, a home. You wouldn't think permission for something industrial.
Well, this input is very valuable. It really is. I appreciate you telling me that, because that's the kind of conversation I want us to have. I want our council to I want to recognize Copeland Campbell, Mayor, our Mayor, and also our council board.
Can you speak up a little?
Yeah.
We can't hear you.
I was going to say our mayor, honorable mayor, Dean Holly came to the room, and also our honorable councilwoman, Stephanie Gordon from Ward D is coming to the room right there. So I just want to recognize them while they're here. But you know what, that is that's exact, oh, I'm sorry, this young man has a question.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Like you stated, we're all concerned about the property being back to residential. But what is the advantage? What is there an advantage of the property being residential? Just those two spots. Is there an advantage now?
That's to be determined. That's to be determined.
And I can tell you, we are in discussions with Microsoft as far as what that, all that's going to be on that site will be. To commend them on their efforts meeting with us on it. So what I do want to do is, thank you. Can any more, before I let Kim go, any more questions for Kim? I will be here if there's any more questions we have, but I do want to get an opportunity for our representative of Microsoft to come forward and also talk about what the proposed plan is and where they stand in the current process. We have been discussing with Microsoft ways in which to address some of the things we've discussed already to this point. And so that's still ongoing right now. So I did want to bring forward the state local government affairs manager. I think I got it right. Mrs. LaBria Lee Holt.
Yeah, you got it. It's fine.
And I want to bring all her staff on board. And you know, this is a good discussion because this is the only way we can get better, and we can do is we need to help give you what you need for not only for our staff but also for them. So, but I'm gonna have her go forward, and I'm gonna have her introduce her team, and then we'll be here. Our team is staying; they're not going anywhere. If there's any more questions we have, they'll be here to answer questions. Whatever.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for having us, and I'm going to stand a little bit closer because I do want you all to be able to hear. My name is LaBria Lee Holt, and I am here in the Atlanta area. I am newer to this project, but I am a daughter of this city, and I am really grateful to be here with you all tonight. So I want to first start by saying thank you, because I know that many of you have questions and are concerned and have thoughts about this project, and we would not be able to get anywhere without getting that input. I also have to say that I am here and been added to this project for reasons that were unforeseen for me and our team. I am newer to this project. I think many of you met my predecessor, Terrence Herron, who is the man who recruited me to Microsoft and who I had a pleasure to work with and alongside and for and to learn from, and the very same man who would talk to me about this project and what he knew that it could do for the city of East Point and how privileged he felt to be a part of it. So I feel like it's only right, as the new face in the room, that I'm just transparent about how I ended up here. And it's not that Microsoft wanted to throw more people in, it's that the reality is I worked alongside Terrence, and Terrence unfortunately passed after Thanksgiving. And so I am here because I want to continue to carry the torch that I know he was carrying as a local person here, alongside with my colleagues who have flown in from across the country, because they really want to make this work. And we want to make it work for the city of East Point, alongside the leadership here. We have been able to hear from your wonderful mayor. We have had lots and lots of meetings with the city manager. We have heard from and met with some of the city council members who have questions, and it's only right that we are here tonight as a continuation to meet with you all. So please know that we respect your time and we value it, and we want to be a good partner and showcase to you that we have worked on the things that came out of the last meeting. And so today, what you will hear is an update on a lot of the questions that maybe some of you very much asked at the last meeting about this project. We hope that we can give you the information you're looking for, and we are willing to use this as ongoing dialogue. Let me get out of the way. Ongoing dialogue to inform the way that this project comes together. We certainly believe that there is a way for it to be great for the city and, you know, a great addition to the city by having this use on the land. So I want to I do want to make sure that you meet our team because we have some experts here who have flown from literally the other side of the country so that they could be here to answer any technical questions that may come up if we need them. And I know that many of you have been working with my colleague here, Diane, who's incredible and been trying to make sure that she's accessible and answering, but just know that we're here. And if you wouldn't mind would Chris and Jonathan and others from Microsoft, maybe I'll turn it over to Diane, who's going to walk through the presentation. And we'll just make sure that you all have access and know that we want to be responsive and helpful. Yes, sir?
I hear what you're saying. I hear you saying make it work for the city. What about the community?
Well, I'm sorry, that's what I mean.
Still in the community. We are in the community. And we are being stepped on. We are being disrespected. We are being treated unfairly. And when I say unfairly, and I mean by name, but I know that I'm a believer, and I believe that God will make it right. We can say what we want to, and we can express ourselves in the tone that we want to. But if our hearts are not right, and big companies seem to think that the people, the community doesn't count.
Thank you. I hear you, and by City of East Point, I mean the community of East Point. So thank you for your perspective, and I hear you loud and clear and agree that this is about the community as well, which is why we're here tonight. This is with and for the community, and for you all to have direct access to hear about the updates and ask any questions that you may have.
Question. So based on that, the community, so I was going to ask you, you mentioned that it's great for the community, what it can do for the community. So is there a brief that tells us not only the short-term benefits, but the long-term benefits of what you're talking about and all these benefits to the community?
Well, I think that you will hear an overview today. The team has put together this pretty brief presentation to kind of, and we can continue to provide more information and talk offline about that.
Is there something available that the citizens can see, not just for me today or later, somewhere we can go?
There will be. What I will say, and you heard some of this previously, so I didn't want to repeat it because I think that they explained well that we've been talking and meeting and making sure that we're hearing and listening to what the community has been saying, your concerns are on this project, and those conversations are continuing and they're in an ongoing basis. And there will be something for someone like you eventually to see more once there's a conclusive project, because the reality is we heard, our team heard the community at the last meeting, and the reason why there's no finalized proposal, you won't see anything finalized today, is because we're still listening to the community.
I'm sorry, but you mentioned that there are benefits. So I don't really want the end result. I want to know what is proposed, because there has to be some proposed benefits. I don't want to wait until later to see it. I would like to see that up front before we go into a meeting, so that we all know what the benefits are.
We do have a community blog that's open that highlights a few of them. In addition, the county has done some economic analysis based on one phase of the project, so one building. So it's a combination of...
But those are short-term, so I'm talking about the long-term benefits.
That kind of analysis is a long-term analysis. And so, and we didn't want to be projecting something that came from us. We wanted to third-party government person.
Yeah, the reality is we have not, as you heard, we have not built anything on that lot.
No, I get it, but did you
And
mention?
we're still entering the city of East Point. So I'm sorry that we don't have all those answers, but we're still in the preliminary phases. We don't, as you heard, we don't even have a final proposal, which is why there hasn't been payment, and which is why there isn't a final scope to look at, because we are listening to the community and trying to make sure
I'm sorry,
that we
ma'am.
are taking into consideration those things. And sorry, I'm trying to make sure you all
No,
can hear.
I was just saying, I was just going based on your comments saying that you already know what these benefits are.
Right.
So I wanted to know.
And clearly, some of that has been discussed in previous meetings, some of it outlined on the website, and happy to kind of relay, reinforce that, but also acknowledging the point that Labrie is making. We're early in the process.
Again,
so
sir, my question was,
some-
is there something that we can have
Yes, it's
electronically
online.
already for these benefits that, are coming long-term or, whatever? It just doesn't sound clear.
All that information is on, where is it?
Yeah.
It is on, we will highlight the website on the
We
site.
can highlight the website.
Yes, and we actually shared it in prior communications and prior meetings, but understanding that not everyone's been privy to that.
But it's not available, like, I have to ask for it. I can't just search it and find it.
Yeah, Microsoft East Point Data Center.
Okay.
I think
That's all I have.
Well, and the reason, I just want to say, I think on our frustration is that we'll hear what you have to say, but it always goes in a round circle. We had concerns from the beginning. And yes, there's nothing, I pass it every day, there's no building there, we get that, and I see and understand we're still working towards that. But the frustration from us, from me, as a citizen, is that we do feel like it's just so rammed down our throats. And what we like to hear, and I'm hoping that it will be in the presentation, how has the issues that we raised been addressed? That's all we want. We want to cut to the chase. We don't want it, this is nice, I hope the presentation, but it gets us that frustrated because we want to cut to the chase. We want to know, have those questions in the areas that we have concerns. What are you guys, Microsoft, what are you going to do about it?
Well, I'm glad that you said that, because that's what the presentation is
Go ahead,
about.
go ahead.
So that at least gives me some good, you may still have questions, but at least the presentation does focus on the issues that you brought up. And it doesn't show everything that is in works and all the alternatives and options that we're looking at, but you will get to see at least some of the
I think
things.
that'll calm us down a little bit because it's in the meetings that I've attended, that's how I left feeling we're going around in a circle, going around in a circle. And I think that's what we want. So,
I think we got some. Okay, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Okay, great. So, hello everyone. I'm Diane Strom. I work on the community engagement side of the house. I'm excited to see so many familiar faces tonight and appreciate you all coming out on a rainy evening. Like Labrie said, we're going to go over a little bit of what the project is, just to reorient. I wasn't sure if there would be new people here tonight, so I want to make sure people know what it is we're proposing to do here in East Point. And then really reflect on what we heard at the last meeting and what we did with it. And then show what our work has been, really focusing in on the substation, because we know that has been an issue of central concern for the community. We've also brought a third-party expert to talk about health related to the substation. Hearing that you all had those concerns, we felt it was important to bring an expert to speak to those. Then we will pause for Q&A. We know the substation and health are really important to you all, so we want to take a pause there and have your questions, answer those questions. Hopefully, then we can wrap up and then break out and maybe look at some of the maps on and photos on the side and have one-on-one conversations. If you can't hear me, please indicate it. I tend to be soft-spoken, so I'm going to do my best to project tonight. So really quickly, I won't read this word for word, but data centers, just to reorient, are the infrastructures that power the world and the cloud. And I always kind of think about it, it allows me to watch YouTube on my phone. It allows me to send my email via Hotmail. I can do online banking, online shopping, mobile apps. Locally, we have organizations like the Fulton County Schools and American Cancer Society that use our cloud and use our data centers. So we also know that there are hospital banks and others that use our services. And so the data center that we're proposing here helps really deliver our digital world. I also want to touch on what the gentleman in the back was asking about what happens when Microsoft joins the community. We really see an opportunity for creating jobs. We know that when we come in, we bring family wage operation jobs, we bring construction jobs, and all of those help build economic growth. In addition, the taxes that we pay from our data center operations go to do revenues for the city and for local governments, for schools. So those taxes that we pay go and help fund fire stations, staff, other things in the city. In addition, we focus on state-of-the-art technologies, facilities. We work to focus on sustainability, as well as we have a philanthropic arm. My colleagues in our community development team work to create a partnership with Atlanta Technical College to fund a data center academy so that we can help train people to work, local people to work in our data centers. So Microsoft has that partnership, and that is available for people to start working on. I think last time we were here, Paul went into it in great detail about kind of what that academy is, but we're really excited to share who our partner is. The community development team also goes and has donated money to the Atlanta Food Bank, Trees Atlanta, and other programs. So really quick overview there. As for what the project is, at our campus at full build out, we'll have 3 buildings, 1 substation to serve those 3 buildings, 3 data center buildings. And it will have about 50 employees per building that work 24/7. So unlike a warehouse or a logistics center, we don't have a bunch of people coming in at shifts. We don't have a bunch of tractor trailers going out. It's people coming in to work at the data center. And like I said, there's about 50 per building. Right now, we're in phase 1 of our development, and we're building 1 data center building. That substation that we want to talk about, sensing and support facilities, as well as landscaping to help screen our site. We want to kind of be out of sight as much as possible. So reflecting on the meeting that we had with you all in September, we really appreciated your feedback and the subsequent comments that we have received. And I just wanted to reflect on what we heard, and we really heard a lot about moving the substation in the secondary entrance, that entrance on Ben Hill Road near Summerlin Drive. That is an emergency entrance for Georgia Power should an energy emergency happen, but we heard loud and clear from the neighbors that they didn't like where the entrance was. Could we move it? We also heard concerns about health related to the substation, as well as limiting the visibility of the substation. And I think one of the folks that was here last time actually was like, hey, could you do a wall that looks like a house so it blends into the community? Another gentleman emailed us after the meeting to say, hey, I have some ideas on different types of trees, and have you talked to Trees Atlanta? So we've been getting various inputs into and feedback on it. We also heard about construction and dust and how dust was going off the site. Michael talked about last time how we started mitigating that dust and how we've since continued to mitigate dust on our site. In addition, we heard about concerns about just traffic on Ben Hill Road. It's a busy road with a curve. And like the gentleman in the back said, also wanting to understand the benefits to East Point. So what have we done with your feedback? Our team went back and we were like, what can we do with the substation? What can we do with the emergency entrance? So we've worked to shift that substation and emergency entrance. In addition, we hired a third-party expert to come talk tonight to answer health questions. And we've implemented additional dust mitigation both on-site as well as services for adjacent neighbors to help reduce any dust that may be going onto their properties. At the last meeting, we talked about those pre-construction surveys, and there was a concern like, hey, I live outside of the area, could you come inspect my house? Anyone who had reached out to us and asked, we sent our inspectors out to go inspect. So tonight, we're here to give you a progress update and answer your question. So this was the original design we brought last time that showed the layout of the substation, which you can see. See if my cursor will let me move it, it won't. Just walk. Here's the substation. So this was the original location right here. You can see the driveways that are near the residents. So like we said last time, and I won't go into great detail, we had cited this location, the substation there, to avoid the pipeline, flood zones, wetlands, ensure that we could have 3 buildings on the site, and the location of that secondary or emergency entrance was really to make sure Georgia Power had access to that substation in any sort of energy emergency. In addition, our design meets or exceeds city code on separation distance between the substation and residences, as well as the setback and buffer requirements. So since then, we have been working to shift the substation and really look at what can we do to move the emergency entrance further away from the neighbors' driveways, as well as move the substation further away. The dotted line in pink is where the substation and entrance was before. And then what you see now in the tan is where the substation is proposed now. So it was shifted 120 feet to the north. I'll just also note that it moves the substation then 120 feet to the north, and there's neighbor on the same side of Ben Hill Road. I'm just going to do this one. So the shift in substation is is a response to community feedback and increases the distance between the substation and residences while still continuing to meet the city's requirements for setback, landscape buffer, and setbacks from the substation from residences. So what does it look like? So this is what, last time I was here, we showed some renderings of what the substation might look like. This is from the same vantage point that we took last time, but you can see that the entrance has been moved further down, and you can see that we've added vegetation in front of that entrance to really start to screen it as much as we can. So on day 1, the side on the left, you can see that the trees, they take a little while to grow. What you can't see is there's also a substation barrier fence that's about 12 feet tall there to also try to help block out. So when you look through the trees, you also would see the substation barrier fence, so you wouldn't see right through. And then the view on the right is the views once the trees mature. And then what would the neighbors across the street from Ben Hill Road see? We would replace the trees there, and on the left is what we would see on day 1, and on the right is what you would see once the trees mature. And in this case, in both cases, there's a minimum of 35 feet of trees and landscaping to help block the view of the substation. And so, in addition, these are kind of our initial looks with trees and landscaping. We know there are other options out there, so we are trying to think and explore what other ways could we potentially screen the view. I'll also note, we wanted to show what's different between September, what we shared in September, which is on the left, and what we're sharing today. And you can see the emergency entrance moved further north, further away from our neighbors' driveways, and we've added more screening. So when you're driving down the road, it's much more screened in. So like I said, we're also looking at other examples, other types of screening we could do. I have a photo my boss and I took when we were here last time of a substation of Georgia Power's in Atlanta where they did a really interesting facade. In addition, on the right, you see a safe fence that Georgia Power has said that they could use that kind of shows a more neutral palette. We're looking at other ways that we could consider art. Like I said, somebody last time had suggested a house maybe as something that could be a facade on a wall around the substation. So we're really trying to think through what might work best, and definitely would welcome your comments on that. I am done with my part of the presentation on substation siting. I want to invite Drew Thatcher to come up. He's a certified health physicist. He's here to talk about the substation and health. I'm just going to pull up this presentation. I'll just stand there.
Well, I just hit the space bar. Right.
Thanks, Drew.
Hi, everyone. Just wanted to give you a quick background of who I am. Way back in the day, I was a nuclear engineer in the Navy, probably before most of you all were born. After I got out of the Navy, I went to grad school at Georgia Tech, so I did graduate from there with a master's. I'm a board certified health physicist. What my area of specialty really is honestly anything to do with the electromagnetic spectrum. It could be 60 hertz power lines, it could be non-ionizing, it could be nuclear power, hospitals, x-rays, fluoroscopy, you name it. I was an expert for the state of Washington for about 20 years on this subject. I'm an editor of a health physics journal for scientific papers. I'm a consultant to the standard setting board for this for industrial exposures, and I was on the faculty at Vanderbilt as an adjunct professor for about a decade. So I'm very familiar with this subject matter, this topic. I do it quite a bit. If you have any questions while I'm talking, I'm going to give like 10 minutes because I can talk for 2 hours and then you're all on the floor and you're just, oh, please let him stop talking. And so we'll do 10 minutes and then if we do a breakout, you can ask more questions after that. So if that sounds fair. Just big picture, this is the electromagnetic spectrum. We're talking about 60 hertz power lines over here. Way over here you've got radio, you have infrared, visible lights, ultraviolet light, we're all familiar with that. That's, from the sun, etc. That's the minimum energy needed to break DNA strands and cause cancer. Anything to the left of that could be radio waves, EMF, doesn't matter what it is, it can't break DNA strands. It really cannot initiate cancer, and that's not subject to uncertainty. There's many benefits to things like x-rays, etc. As I mentioned in hospitals, you have diagnostic x-ray, you have therapeutic applications. So there's a lot of stuff, even though they can cause there are weak carcinogen, we know there's benefits. But down here, this is just a function of the fact that when you're using electricity, it produces both an electric and a magnetic field. You have an electric field that's set up, even if it's plugged in, if it's not on. This magnetic field that people are worried about, that's only as a course of when current's flowing through a line, and once that current is flowing through a line, it's setting up a magnetic field as a result of that. That would be just about anything we use in life is going to cause that. Blow dryer, any equipment in a kitchen, or here the lights, or you name it. So, like I said, it's not ultraviolet, it's not x-rays. I've got a buddy who does graphic stuff, so I really like these. And then it's everything that we have here. Now, there's comparisons. So this substation is going to have a lot of power, right? And I've got a graph here that I'm going to show next. But I'm trying to put this into perspective. The state of Georgia and the feds, the United States, doesn't have a limit for the allowable 60 hertz magnetic field. And it's not because they don't want to set standards. It's because in spite of the fact that we've been looking at it for 50 years, we really haven't found the adverse health effects from that. But I'll talk about that in a little more detail. But just giving you a limit. We have an International Commission for Non-Ionizing Radiation Protection that would say it's safe for any of us to be exposed to a level up to 2,000 milligauss 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
I'm sorry, what's the source of this research?
Well, I haven't shown any research yet.
Okay.
Does this correspond with the World Health Organization's research?
It does. I'll show that here in just a second. So the exposures, and I'll show my calculation. I show power lines here. It's way less than that for this substation, and I just finished the analysis on that today. So let me get everybody oriented. So this, okay, we're north. So this is the substation here, and north is this way. So, and what I did was I set up, they're going to have transformers in here. They're going to be stepping down voltage from 230,000 volts down to like 25,000 volts. So you're going to have current of different amperages running through here. And they provided me what was a kind of a 10-year worst case. If they got all the buildings running, fully loaded, what would be the worst case kind of analysis? And that's really what I ran. Bev Hill Road would be on this side. You know we have that setback. So the road's probably over here. A lot of concern usually is like, oh, what about exposures greater than about 4 milligauss? Here I'm showing that all the exposures from the substation, that's pretty big, really won't exceed the boundaries of the substation at all. So that's a good thing. Does that, and I'm sorry most of that's blocked out, but you can see as you go closer in, if you were to walk in the substation, you get a higher magnetic field. But as far as where the neighbors are, or even across the street on Ben Hill Road, there's going to be no exposure from this substation at all. Yes, sir?
How big is that?
One side to the other is probably 700 feet, maybe, a couple football fields. And then I would say front to back, this distance is maybe a football field, something like that.
How many levels? How many floors?
Well, it's not floors, it's a substation, so it's all going to be at the ground, right? So, let me see what I got next. All right, your World Health Organization. So, this is straight from them. It's not sugar-coated at all. Current evidence does not confirm the existence of any health consequences from exposure to low-level electromagnetic fields.
I think the key word is confirm.
Right.
But they say it's likely.
Low level, right? Because there's a difference. There's a distinct difference between low voltage and high voltage, right? And I've asked this question as to whether this is high or low voltage. I still haven't gotten an answer about whether it's high or low voltage, because what you're saying, I agree, from what the research that I've seen shows, low voltage is not exposure. But it seems like you guys are going to be on high voltage. So I think that that's a key question that we need answered, if this is high or low voltage. Also, I want to know two more things. NIH has a study that was done on people, Denver, Los Angeles, and some Nordic country, right? And that shows, particularly, there were 3 areas of concern. Cancer in general, childhood leukemia, which they did show a significant difference, where 1 in 24,000 who are not near a substation, high voltage, right? Want to distinguish high versus low. No substantial risk, like it says here. As soon as you go to high voltage, for the children, it went from 1 in 24,000 to 1 in 12,000, okay? Developmental concerns, fertility issues, neurological concerns. All of this was noted in a study online with the NIH. Dated 1997, right? But that also confirms something I saw from the United Kingdom on the national grid, right? With the national grid. Because they have an independent council of scientists who can approve where substations go in their country. So it's not left up to politicians, officials, so the scientists are considering what's safe. So low voltage,
I agree with you, but can we get an answer as to if this is high or low voltage?
I think your term on low and high voltage isn't quite accurate because the whole basis of whether there are health effects or not were related to the magnetic field as a result of the current. So if you have a lower voltage, then the current in the lines tends to be higher. So you can have distribution lines for our neighborhood that are going to result in a higher magnetic field than if we had something that was a very, very high, and that's one of the reasons why they do it. It's efficient, but like a transmission line at 230,000 volts, 230 kilovolts, they have a very, very high voltage so they don't get line loss. It's called I²R loss, heat losses. So the current flowing through that big 230 kV line is a lot less. And as it's a lot less, there's a lot less amperage. And they also put those higher, so the greater the distance, the lower the magnetic field. So if we go back, so that's why this is, you were talking about NIH and the different studies. There's a total of like 35 epidemiological studies that have been done to date looking at that. And there was, back in 2011, I think they declared this a class 2B carcinogen. It's possible. It's possible that there could be. But there's a couple things going on. One is they found that there was an elevated risk from 4 milligauss or greater. But here you can see that from this, there's actually nothing outside of the boundary of the substation. So there isn't going to be, if that were a risk, there's not going to be anything to the neighbors anyway. But there's a couple big points I want to bring up, and this is why the science doesn't get so easy, I guess. If we look at something causing cancer, it's like a three-legged stool. So epidemiology, which is what the NIH study, et cetera, is, that's like a weather vane. It just tells you we found an association with something. It actually doesn't look at the science of probability of causation or something like that. Any carcinogen known to humans, you also find the effects at the cellular level, you find the effects at the animal level. So it's like a three-legged stool. There's not a single carcinogen known to humans where we can't find the effect in all three areas. We're not seeing that at all for magnetic field exposures from low voltage or high voltage. It's the magnetic field that we're worried about. That's why they make that statement. They're not qualifying this. So let's go talk about what you talked about. We do have a weak but somewhat consistent epidemiology that shows that. Absolutely. But we don't have any supporting evidence. And we're talking like over 1,000 different studies, animal studies, cellular studies, etc. We don't have a dose-response relationship. So what that means is we have that low, really low level magnetic field. 4 milligauss is really low, I'll be honest. There's a lot of industrial exposures I'm familiar with where the exposures are significantly higher. No risk at all from cancer from any of those. And now, this is the big one because I'm a physical scientist. No plausible biological mechanism how something that isn't attenuated by our bodies, by trees, by anything could go through our body and somehow cause cancer and not leave a telltale sign. So let's look at example, ultraviolet light. We know if we go outside and we're exposed for a long time, we can get a skin cancer, right? You can get a melanoma, a basal squamous cell carcinomas, all of those things as a result. But what else does it do? If you're out there a lot, you can get freckles, you'll have a loss of elasticity, you get nevi. There's a ton of things that happen as a result of exposure, not just cancer, from ultraviolet rays. So here you have the concept that these magnetic waves that just pass through our body, they don't interact with us at all. They're not leaving any other telltale signs. And if they were passing through us, they're passing through animals too. We're all cellular, we're all living organisms. So we would be able to see those things in the animal studies and the cellular studies, and we just don't. So it is true that way back in '78, there was a couple studies that found an elevated risk from that. But they also did a number of studies in the 2000s, etc., and they found that those effects extended to like 600 feet away from like a transmission line. Well, that doesn't make any sense because there's no exposure that far away, because the the magnetic field drops away. So now they're saying in those fancy studies that we're finding effects even where there aren't any possibility of having an effect, which doesn't even make sense. And then when you looked at a lot of those epidemiology studies and you broke it down by year, they found that the effect changes over time, and it actually reduced over time. It was higher like in the 60s, and it's lower now in the 90s. And it's like, well, that doesn't make any sense either, because we're using more power, not less. So there was a lot of problems with that epidemiology. So, I mean, that's where we are. I'm not trying to sugarcoat anything here, but what you brought up is a really good point. This I already talked about. I mean, but like I said, this happens for any single carcinogen you could think of. If something's going to cause a cancer to humans, you're going to see a lot of other things that it can do to you. And for magnetic fields, it literally just passes through our body. The only way we get an effect in our body is if that magnetic field is high enough, and I mean really high, so thousands of times higher than what we're talking about here. It can induce a current in the body, a current in our blood system or something like that. It gets high enough where you can have an impact in blood flow or something like that. But those are extremely high levels, thousands and thousands of times higher than what we're talking
Can
about
I
here.
ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Is there a monitoring procedure in this program? I know that Georgia Power has a requirement that they are supposed to come out with their meters to find out how high the magnetic force is on those huge
I can't speak to that.
Right, but I'm asking, oh, okay, that's what I want to know, is how frequently do they monitor, or do they monitor the frequency and the current?
Okay, I can't speak to Georgia Power because I don't work with them. I am a consultant with 6 different utilities throughout the country. Most every one of those has some kind of monitoring program. Typically, they don't do periodic monitoring. They'll do a response to requests of concerns, etc. And then they will come out and do measurements like that. I was out on Ben Hill Road today. This is not the fanciest of instruments I own. I own one that actually costs too much. I don't want to fly out with it because this one's pretty easy. Magnetic fields are pretty easy to measure, but the one I have has an extension thing, and if I bent and broke it, so this one works, it works great. That's what I used today when I walked out there. The distribution lines that you see on Ben Hill Road, I'm sure you're familiar with them, pretty low background, because you can imagine there's not a lot of, it's not a very big area, there's not a lot of power draw for those, so that was a pretty low numbers. I saw background of about 1 milligauss to as high as about 6, just walking through there. It's going to vary depending on load and usage, etc. So the background for those was a little bit higher than what we're talking about inside the substation. But again, those numbers were compared to what is considered safe or not safe. Those are certainly not of concern at all. This is just an overview. So we've been looking at this magnetic field exposures, and I've been personally involved since the early 90s on this. Like $500 million spent, 2,900 studies. This is a lot. This was the World Health Organization conclusion. My experience with the World Health Organization is they rarely, they're always going to caution themselves. They're always going to try to err on the side of conservatism. So that's a pretty strong statement. I'm a dad. I've got several kids. I've got a house that's right next to a distribution line for our neighborhood. I'm not worried about that at all. All I think of it as is the green belt. So.
Is that the same as a substation? Distribution or a substation? Right. You have a substation.
No, I just have a distribution line.
A data center and a substation. Because the data center also includes some risk.
Well, the data center is not going to give any exposure, right? Because if we're looking, if let's say they're generating a lot of power use here, right? So you're going to have inside that picture she showed where it was a stack or you could walk in those hallways. If I were to take this instrument in there, I promise you, we would probably see numbers of 10 milligauss or maybe 20 or something like that. It's hard to say, all depends on current. But that exposure won't even extend beyond the boundaries of the building. Yes, ma'am.
So, and maybe you might not be able to answer this, but maybe someone from Microsoft can, right? Because I know new equipment comes available, right? And I did notice, you know, after knowing that you guys look at WHO, WHO did a call last fall in December for scientists to study the impact of EMF and RF, right? Because of all the new technology. So it's really not necessarily known yet what impact they have, but in terms of the equipment that is going in this data center, can someone speak to whether or not this is old technology or is this new technology, and if going forward it's going to be new technology? Because you really can't say there's no study that's been done on new technologies and the radio frequency that's coming from that and the impact that it has on health, right? So we're kind of going to be guinea pigs, and that's what I.
Can I say something for that? So my experience with technology is we've gone, say, from the 80s, 90s, 2000s, etc. All of the new technology is way more efficient than it was in the past. So like a computer that I had maybe 20 years ago uses way more power than it does now. Same with storage. Data centers are basically just big computer banks, but we're way more efficient on the power usage for those than we were in the past. So technology tends to make things better in terms of power usage. And when we're talking here about magnetic fields, then that means lower current. But they've already done a worst case. I can only imagine how many storage banks are in these as far as computers go. Radio wave, though, I'm not aware of any radio waves and significance that's going to be coming out of this, because when you're talking radio waves, what you have to have is a transmitter. So the magnetic fields from these 60 hertz it's just a result of the current flowing through something that it sets up a magnetic field. But you only really get radio waves as a result of a transmitter, an antenna, or something actually projecting energy out into space, like a TV tower or a radio station or something like that. There could be incidental frequencies as a result of something, but again, those are going to be, since it's not a transmitter, those will not be very far. I've got the instruments for those. That instrument was really expensive. It was about 20 grand for those. But that, since it's not a transmitter, it's just going to be an incidental RF radio frequency, and that would be limited to in the building, or even maybe 6 inches or a foot away from one of the data storage banks. So I don't think, you're certainly not going to have anything in the community as a result of this that you're going to be able to measure in any way, shape, or form. But like I said, I've got all the instruments in the world that do this kind of stuff. I can measure everything, and I can promise you without a doubt that nothing here at all, we're going to be able to measure it all. The other thing with radio waves is, you may know, they get blocked by just about everything. So unlike this magnetic field, which can just go through everything, radio waves are blocked by trees, by leaves, by all kinds of stuff. And I think we used to know that when we first had our cell phones. You'd be inside and you're like, daggone it, I can't get a coverage, and you have to go outside because your building itself, the roof itself, was shielding you. So radio waves get shielded by the building, by all kinds of stuff. But that magnetic field, it'll go through trees, it'll go through everything. But my analysis showed that it didn't go anywhere, right? It was staying right inside the property boundary. It wasn't even going across the street. So, and this was a worst case, like 10 years down the road, they're fully developed, they got all of their stuff that they wanted to build. So I think that was where yes ma'am.
I think that was going to be my question, is that this is just with land disruption and the groundwork being done. Another thing that I found operative with WHO is that, again, like the young lady mentioned, it's the low level. And although the study seems inconclusive, there still doesn't seem to be anything definitive to assure the community that they would not be impacted. It's inconclusive. The other concern is that the impact over time, because nothing's there right now, because in those same studies it talks about how over time continual exposure to quote-unquote low levels, which we're still not sure exactly what that is, can cause, some health implications. So I guess I would be interested in knowing, with your expertise, what can you offer the community in regard to scientific insight that we don't have, that over time this exposure is not going to increase?
Well, can we all agree that I've kind of shown that there is no exposure to anybody in any residence from this at all?
No.
So unless you're spending time in here, there would be no cumulative exposure. But honestly, even the World Health Organization agrees with me on this. There is no short-term harm, and there is no short-term input. Even if we had a long-term impact, so let's look at a cellular level and look at our body. We breathe every day, right? Every minute of every day so we can survive. And as a result of that, there's an oxidative stress in our body. And if you look at that oxidative stress, it causes single and double strand breaks of our DNA every second of every hour of every day. And that happens. And our body has an enzymatic repair process that's on a milli and microsecond basis. It's super fast. And so we're getting this damage and our DNA gets broken all the time and it's constantly being repaired. So if we have a harm from something outside, then there's no real long-term damage from that. It either, at least for radio waves, for magnetic fields or something, it has to be immediate or it doesn't happen at all. Unlike ultraviolet light, that causes a DNA strand break that is misrepaired, right? We have enough energy incident to our DNA to cause a breakage, and the problem is if you have a breakage of 2 strands within a certain distance, you get a double strand breakage. Those are hard to repair. That's what eventually leads to this. This can't cause DNA strand breakage. I had a talk.
Well, before you go further, do you mind explaining in layman's terms then, at the most granular level, so that people who are not familiar with the scientific side of it can understand? Because you're trying to give us reassurance, but there's not a level of understanding where we can receive it, I think. So maybe if you get a little more granular,
okay,
all right, from a layman's terms, and maybe people will have a better understanding as to why they can feel comfortable.
Well, comfort comes from a little bit from a knowledge of greater understanding. One of the things that I can do, because you've never met me before, right? I mean, they could have found me off the street and said, this is going to work. Exactly. We're going to show this guy, he's going to say a few things and we'll never see him again and boom, we're done, right? So I can give you, and I think you've got to a number of great websites, I can give you a number of sources that you can go on your own and take a look and read at some of that stuff. And then what I've done in the past is I'll give you my email address, etc., or your phone number. You can reach out to me after you've looked at some of this stuff, because I don't think, honestly, there's no way in a meeting tonight I can give you 100% assurance. And I wouldn't expect you to believe that. It's like, I mean, honestly, I'm just telling you something. You see what I'm saying?
We definitely have to vet the information, but I think people will leave here at least with something to take initiative on to begin.
Well, I think the best thing you could do,
give them an understanding of your perspective, because
right,
that's why you're here before us, to give us that. So I'm just asking that you break it down for everyone in the room in a way that they can maybe better understand and receive it, and then they can further their research.
Okay.
Where did your confidence come from?
The confidence comes from the fact that, one, the studies that she had mentioned were just weak epidemiology studies. Epidemiology is just a look at statistics, applied statistics, and they're relating two things that really aren't related, and they'll find a causation. Just like glasses and IQ are correlated or something like that. I mean, it's a correlation. It doesn't mean that the two are related in any way, shape, or form. It's just a relationship. That's all we really have for this magnetic field. These initial studies, honestly, were really poorly performed studies. But you have had a consistent relationship. Something's going on there, but it's not related to the magnetic fields, because we have some of those studies that showed different risks over time.
I would
So
say
you-
that it's not cause, but it is, relationship does not mean cause.
Right.
But there is a relationship, doesn't mean that it caused it. I'm saying that, doesn't mean, because I'm a data analyst.
Okay.
So, relationship does not tell you that something was caused by it, just,
But it
might
helps.
be some relationship.
But it helps you go look at it further, which is why
Right,
we did the animal and the cellular studies, because that's why we do animal studies. I was thinking we should use lawyers, but actually rats work too. But if you do, the reason why we do those animal studies is because we expose them for their entire lives. So while we may have a cancer latency that could be 10 or 20 years after an exposure, for a rat or a mouse, it's less than 2 years. So the whole process gets shrunk down. So
I live here too. I mean, I was just saying, I worked with radars for 20 years. In radars, I mean, I'm okay.
you lost your hair. Let's be real upfront about that.
Well, no, I cut it.
Okay.
No,
Sorry, I had to do that.
But I do understand the concerns of long-term exposure. I mean, I was exposed to radar waves, side lobes, all the stuff that you were talking about earlier, for many years. So, but I understand the concern of the community. We got kids, we got stuff, and
Oh, absolutely.
I was just going to say, and I said this, to you guys before, right? My kids, all of us as parents, we're parents. You're not going to put your kids in
Absolutely not.
in harm's way unnecessary. So just the week study, and it's from I get that this is a business, right? But the human factor in me as a mother of 2 kids who are sitting right here who live, that part that you keep touching right there, that's my house, right? Right there next to that second data center. And you can't tell me with 100% confidence, and that's what I would need to be comfortable with this. And it's not necessarily a question, more so a venting or a place of feeling totally helpless. Because one thing that I really, really want to answer to, high voltage, low voltage. If you need a gauge in terms of what the national grid says, it's anything above 50 megahertz, right? Which you said 60, right, is what this is, right?
No, all the power in the U.S. is 60 hertz.
Okay.
Right. So the voltages change, but honestly, I'm at a loss on the low voltage, high voltage. I'm not following
What most of the
that.
studies defined was 50 or lower was considered low. So this is already outside of what they are referring to. There's no correlation with low whatever, right? Because they defined it to be 50 megahertz. So for me...
Now you're talking, when you say megahertz, that's a radio frequency.
Yeah, well...
So, and we're not talking radio waves here.
Hold on, because I have a second.
Oh, that's fine.
So go ahead. You can keep talking. I'll get you the next one.
So, good evening, the electric director, Shandal. How you're saying high voltage versus low voltage. So, low voltage within the U.S. is anything below 15 kilovolts. Anything 15 kilovolts or below is considered
residential.
low voltage.
Okay.
Anything above that is high voltage.
I get it, but can we put the voltage relationship in terms of these studies, right? Because we're talking about U.S., because we're muddying the waters. We're talking about what the U.S. accepts, which isn't always the best in terms of health, right? And they don't have any standards for where this should go. They don't put this next to a residential if it's above this, because again, we don't subscribe to this. Other places have done that due diligence. But what I want is, and maybe this is a takeaway for next time when you guys come back, but these studies, what is the voltage that they are looking at in these studies? Because we say high, low, define it, and then define where we are with this particular substation.
Well, if I may, so we have an electric field associated with any kind of distribution lines, transmission lines, etc. Those don't even penetrate the dead skin layer. So it really is only the magnetic field. And it doesn't matter whether the source of that was, because that's current based, not the voltage. So it really doesn't matter whether it's low voltage source or a high voltage source. I can bring my instrument and I can go in our houses and our kitchen and I'll show you areas when you've got your electric oven on or you've got your dishwasher or what have you, that'll be way higher than anything I'm showing you here.
So also to try and answer your question, and I'm just speaking from a electrical side of things. The 230 kV coming into the substation, that's considered high voltage. It goes into the transformer. Transformers do two things, step up or step down voltage. It goes into the transformer and the transformer steps it down so that the servers and computers, that type of thing, can handle that type of voltage. So that's my little piece.
And then, so a classic point though, so we have transformers that are going from 230,000 volts down to 25,000 volts, which is still a lot, so it still has to get stepped down quite a bit. But on one side, we have the current that is maybe a few hundred amps, and then once it gets to that lower voltage, the current goes up by a factor of 10. So the magnetic field is way higher there, but that's also on the back of the property, wait, over here, way further away from everybody. And even in that instance, it still doesn't extend beyond basically the boundary of where that substation is. So I mean, I'm a father of two, although my kids are older than yours. But but I agree with you. At the basic level here, this is a parental decision. Is this safe? Is it not safe? And all I'm trying to tell you is there's no exposure at all. So there really isn't any concern about, even if this were real, let's suppose that maybe there is a risk and we've missed it and the biology doesn't support it even though we've looked at it for 50 years and the animal studies and the cellular studies somehow missed it even though we've been looking at it for 50 years. Let's assume that it is true. You're not exposed. So there really isn't a risk to be worried about in the first place because you're not exposed at all. Not from this substation in any way, shape, or form. And I don't have to qualify that because I can see it. And this analysis is not difficult to perform. It's all based on, so the higher the power line is, the further you're away from it. And the exposure drops over the distance. So you have a couple things going for you. And then the other point is the higher the current, that drives a higher magnetic field. So this analysis is not particularly complicated when we do this. Now when you get into a substation, this took me most of a day to put this together because they have so many lines in there and so many different things. So it wasn't easy to put all the analysis that's blocked off, but you can see the boundary of it. So I put a lot of work into that, but those models are very accurate. But it's true when you spoke about, well, can someone come out? I promise you Microsoft will be more than willing once they get this thing up and running to do perimeter studies, etc., and let you all know so that you have some reassurance of here's what it is we said, here's what it actually is, here's what it is. I mean, your homes are a couple football fields away. So
Mine is right there, close to that second data center.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
that little
right there.
200 feet, I believe.
Yeah,
What's the measurement?
200, it's 150 something.
right, but we're not, this isn't where any of the substation's all the way over here.
So you're saying that with all of the equipment that is in a data center, right? All
Right.
the equipment in the data center, whatever it's going to do, we still don't know about the equipment. Those also give off that, EMS.
They
right?
do, but now let's take all this current that we have here, and you have every single one of these is going to have a load in there. So the actual current flow in any one small area is going to be some small fraction of that whole thing. So since it's such a small fraction, it's just not going to be a big load.
Here's the question.
Yes,
Is
sir.
there, because I understand her concern. So is there any shielding in the building? So is there any Faraday cages, any building?
It goes through everything.
No, he's right.
Faraday cage.
If you build, like I've been involved with universities where they have to do research and we have to actually shield safe a building or a room or something like that. you can actually, just like a microwave oven, for lack of a better word, you see how you're able to see in the microwave oven, but they've got a little metal shielding. We could actually put metal around something and actually shield most of that. But like I said, I don't think there's any point, because once these are up and running, you're not going to get a magnetic field that's going to extend basically beyond these diesel, I don't know if they're diesel, but beyond these generators. Because they're just not going to be a high current flow. The high current flow's here. Once you distribute it to all these different areas, it'll be low.
Those are generators?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yes, data centers are cool.
yeah, okay. That's a whole different conversation, pollution and nuclear.
Well, yeah, hopefully Georgia Power keeps the lights on, right? So,
I mean, get it, but what is?
It's gonna be heat, there's gonna be all types of
Yeah.
stuff, like it's gonna be hot, the trees are now gone, the wildlife is disrupted, it's just, this was not the space for this type of project. I know that it's very smart, but it's just not the space.
I hear you on that.
Yeah.
I'm just the science guy on the magnetic fields though, so that's not my...
So those, the generators only run when the power goes out, I guess?
Well, and they'll probably, generators that I'm aware of, everybody has a cycle where once a month you fire it up, make sure everything runs.
Maintenance.
Yeah, maintenance and runs. But aside from that, when you lost your power at your house and they lost their power, then you're going to hear those probably if you live close. But that's only while the power's out. Yes, ma'am.
Do we have any other data centers that are in this close proximity to, not necessarily Microsoft, but have you guys gotten any information on other data centers that are in close proximity to residential areas like this?
I don't have the answer to that.
We have other campuses, yeah, around the world that either have this proximity or much closer.
In the U.S., we're talking in the U.S.
In the U.S., yeah.
Did we get a list of some of those?
We do publish the locations for our cloud regions.
Okay.
Yeah, so we can, that's certainly available. on
And
the
do
web-
those have substations too? Or no? Yeah?
Yeah, we prefer to put the substations on our site for security and resilience reasons. So, yeah, most of our sites do have substations on site.
I have a question. When you are considering where you're going to build these, what are some of the key considerations? Like, I'm really interested in knowing what made this area attractive.
Well, there's a lot of considerations that come into play. First of all, none of our campuses operate independently. So there's 2 other campuses in the Atlanta metro area that are being constructed in tandem for resiliency purposes. They all work in tandem together. Beyond that, we're looking for the availability of both fiber and power, which are both important. All of the data centers are connected to one another. And then we've talked about the importance of power to the site. So there's actually, from both a resiliency and a latency perspective, there are tight confines on where you can put them in relation to one another.
Okay, so on the question about the benefit, or what made it so enticing to come to this point, going back to the previous briefing, are there any, and I do mean any and all, to use a legal term, any and all subsidies that Microsoft may be receiving from coming to East Point for this project, or related to it? Are there any subsidies?
The state does provide some subsidies to data centers located within the state.
So, because you talked about the taxes, so when do you start paying taxes?
Immediately. The minute we bought it, we're starting paying taxes.
But are they subsidized?
We are paying, we will be the largest taxpayer in the city.
So you're not asking my question. You're not asking my question.
They receive
Simple
tax.
question.
We get a tax break.
They receive tax abatements from the state.
Yeah, we get a tax break.
Is the city okay?
The city wasn't a part of the discussion in those decisions, so all of that was made without us. And so we're not getting the full amount of the property taxes on this site.
So that was my question, sir, and I really want to get a straight answer. I don't want to, it's a straight question, and we get a straight answer.
Like I started off, we get incentives from you.
So then you're not paying full taxes on this?
No.
Okay, that's the real answer.
Yeah. So then I would answer this question, I was waiting since you brought it up. The last time we met, you did share what the probable benefits are, the projected benefits, but we know you don't have to hire City of East Point residents as employees, so that's not necessarily a tangible benefit. And the other things that you projected, those are all hypothetical. So I would like to know, and I'm sure other people want to know, what is a tangible, right? What is a tangible benefit for the residents? Like
That goes to
something
my
like,
initial question earlier, right?
So,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
so the best thing I can talk to in terms of the revenue question that's particularly on the table, is we talked about the philanthropic stuff, but a lot of that is around future engagement. The tangible stuff that's on the table is the analysis that the county did based on one building that showed that over a 10-year period, based on that building being phased in over 10 years, one building, $43 million after tax incentives and property tax alone would go towards schools, city, county, and one other smaller piece.
Over
Those
what
are the
period
three
of time?
big-
10 years? 43 million over 10 years?
43 over 10 million. That's property tax only.
We get $1 million of that.
no, that's
Right.
going to the
Yeah, I
state.
don't
Once we get 1 million,
It's
A
about
year.
6,
1
yeah.
million a year.
over 10 years? We get $1 million over 10 years?
No.
That's the portion.
Million a year.
I believe the portion for the city out of 43 million is a smaller number. And I think
Oh, yeah.
One building, approximately $1 million a year. That is not the only revenue. The mayor has done a very good job of negotiating with Georgia Power, so you'll get a percentage of all revenue off the power we buy for this site. In addition,
Okay, I'm sorry. But you guys said you wanted to be a part of the community. We pay taxes. I pay full taxes. I don't get a break.
don't get a subsidy.
Y'all want to be part of the community. I pay full taxes. I don't get breaks.
So, I have two questions. The first question, okay, as far as, how it will affect the community and the benefits. The decision to go with Georgia Power, I mean, I don't know, I'm just asking, is it a matter of bigger, more accessible versus, because I know I pay utilities and taxes to the city of East Point. So I want to see the city of East Point grow. I want to see less power outages. So it is kind of like contradictory because, yes, certain areas, still use Georgia Power. I personally do not. So my vote and my support would be a company that's going to embrace the city that where I live, where we live, and support taxes and help build the power structure. So what do some of the decisions, what are some of the things you look for when you make a decision and when you guys decided to go with Georgia Power? I mean, they're a big company. Is it because of the size and the efficiency? I'm just curious.
there are any number of factors about it. We did have conversations with the city as well. I mean, thanks to this franchise fee, you'll actually make more money off of this power agreement than if we had gone to the city, or at least a comparable amount.
That's not more money.
I got, sir.
It's not more, it's the same percent.
Yeah, same, so sorry, thank you for that. So in terms of revenue to the city, in terms of the benefits from the power, it's equal.
It's what?
It's equal.
I got, so I was a federal contracting officer for many years. I handled projects, the biggest one was $750 million.
Okay.
Nothing good comes from negotiating with the community after the deal is made. Nothing good comes out of it. Because now we're trying to patch it up and we're trying to make it work. When we should have been, we, the city, had the negotiating table from day one, right? Paying taxes on day one, negotiate on day one. But it seems like, right now we're trying to meet a new family member that we didn't know was around.
No, and I think that's part of the reason why Labria touched upon the fact that when the concerns were raised, we stopped a lot of activities.
But
Now,
sir, you should have known the concerns if you had brought us to the table.
I agree. Yeah, I can't, I totally agree.
And like I was saying earlier, somebody gave us false information because the first meeting we had with you all, you said one building, 40 employees or less. It's 3 huge buildings with 50 employees per building. That means, where are these people driving to? Where is the parking lot? All behind us. That means more traffic on Small Ben Hill Road.
So,
You know, those data centers are huge. And I understand they hum at night. They hum 24/7. They hum. The lights from them will be in our backyards. You know, that's going to light it up. He's talking about football fields. That means all this light is going to be coming into our homes at night when we're trying to sleep and rest. Humming. You know, the buildings making noises. You all didn't take any of this into consideration. You came in and you just destroyed the land. One day I came home and all there was this red dirt and sky. You all have destroyed the community. And I don't understand how you know, were allowed to just come in and just cut down trees and do what you did.
Without the city being involved.
Without the city being involved, without the community being involved. You just came in and demolished everything and didn't consider us at all. It's horrible. It's horrible what you have done to the land.
And to think that we don't value our land. We do value our land.
I'd like to make a point. I didn't see it on one of my, on my list at earlier meetings, and I didn't see it. And that brings a full circle about traffic. And it may be a question for the city, but I want Microsoft to hear and understand because it affects us. Today I witnessed something I had never seen. I was going on my way out to Camp Creek Parkway, taking Ben Hills. The area where the city of Atlanta to get onto Camp Creek owns, I know we've been asking and talking about this for years to have that expansion. Today, when I was going out, of course, traffic was backed up on Ben Hill as you're trying to make the 3 stop signs turn onto Camp Creek. Drivers were getting frustrated because it's backed up, everybody's trying to turn right. So about 10 cars pulled over to the left and cars followed. So the people that were getting off of Camp Creek trying to turn onto Ben Hill stopped. Horns started blowing. It's going to become a serious issue because every day it's getting worse and worse.
Let me address that issue.
What's the footprint on that?
Excuse me. Let me address
Oh, sir, I can hear you. You're talking too
Let
loud.
me address that issue. Your concern is valid and it's solid. There are already plans in the works with GDOT to realign that area.
Is that before or
That's
after?
what I assumed, but I
That's
wanted to hear.
before this development is even considered, because that problem has been an issue, period. So I want to address that. I want to address this concern about taxes too. If we're going to be fair, you have to know all the facts, and then you can make a decision. The fact of the matter is, that property, as undeveloped, taxes are collected. They're minimal compared to when land is improved. So yes, there is a tax abatement, but you're going to get more money in taxes because that land is improved. Now, if you still don't like it, that's your choice, but you have to have all the facts.
Well, there's different types of improvement, right?
But the fact is,
No,
they made a deal
wait, hold up. I want to be factual, because I know that we're upset, and I understand how you feel, because I had this happen to me.
I don't think you understand.
In my neighborhood. No, I had the food bank come when I first got on council, and I had everybody on council except for me and Karen and Renee to put a food bank with a whole bunch of 7 football fields worth of storage in the historic black community. So when I say I know how you feel, I do. But what I'm saying to you is, as you make an educated decision, just have all the facts. And the fact is, there is an increase in property taxes collected because the land is improved. Now, is it maximized? No. But after the 10 years abatement, then you will get the maximum benefit of property taxes collected. So that is something that you should consider, even if it's yes or no. I'm not trying to persuade you. I just want you to have all the facts so you can make an educated decision.
That's true. That's what we're having on our representatives to do, is to be transparent and give people the information.
Exactly.
You guys leasing the land or buying
But
the
not
land?
be chastised because they don't have the facts.
No, nobody's chastising. I want to be clear because I've sat here and I've listened. And to be honest with you, I empathize with you because it happened to me. But I'm going to be transparent with you that we have got more information than I ever had when we put that big warehouse and took away something that else could have been positive in my backyard. So I know how you feel, so I don't want you to feel like I'm working against you. I just want you to know I'm very empathetic to your feelings. But I want you to have all the facts.
So question, is it a lease or a purchase?
Purchase.
Okay. So your plans are to be there past 10 years? That's the plan? Okay.
These are long-term investments.
Has the city advocated for, again, any tangible benefits that we would ask of Microsoft, you know, almost in the form of a restitution, so to speak? The community is disturbed. Of course, it's not welcome. I think at this point we understand it's going to happen. And so I think we should be forward focused, and we still haven't really gotten the answer. So maybe people from the city can act. As our representatives, have you advocated?
But let me answer that question since you want to ask that. This is the answer. Legally, we cannot force any company to do any type of reciprocity or quid pro quo legally. The only way that we can do that is have a community benefits agreement in place, which we tried to start that process in 2021, December, but we have not completed that. So to your point, what you said was very valid. It's very difficult to negotiate on the back end once it's already started. That's valid.
So I want to add, because I didn't say force. I absolutely did not say force. I won't say my background, but I do understand enough to know that it's not something that you can force, but that's why I said advocate.
Yeah,
right?
And the mayor and council member and city manager have all been strong advocates.
And that's what I'm asking. That's just my question. What have has the advocation taken place and what has it been? That's what I'm asking. We know we can't force anyone to do anything, but if you know that you're taking away from a community, it would just be good business practice, good regard for the human element to say, how can we do some restoration? Willfully, not with force.
And you all have really strong advocates across the board. Those are conversations that are underway. We've been very focused on the design elements because clearly, you know, if we're not able to address concerns around design and operational elements and safety and so forth, then that next conversation is moot, right? So we're really trying to focus on some of these key issues, knowing that there are a lot more conversations to be had. Yeah?
Yes, so good evening, everyone. I didn't want to come in and immediately start talking. There was a question asked earlier about the reversion process. I wanted to check with the city manager to make sure I was aware of what had transpired. And as it relates to community benefits. So let me be clear. I've had several meetings with Microsoft senior management decision makers. And when they wanted to meet about community benefits, one, I said we need to hear from the community and what the community would like to see. And I think when we had a meeting, when there was a meeting held like in last year, there was a list of things that the community shared. And Dr. Latanya Martin Rogers had sent those in email to us, so I shared those with Microsoft at that time. Things like aesthetics, right, making sure there's some walking paths, Is there anything they can do for sidewalks? Like all of the different things that you all shared. So that was the initial conversation. They wanted to have a conversation again recently. So I made very clear that there is no price tag near quality of life. So the threshold issue is the substation and the location of it. And we can have a conversation about community benefits, but there is no price tag near quality of life. And after saying that we have to deal with this threshold issue, I then gave some categories of things or some ideas of things that might be considered with the caveat of still coming back to you all. The city manager was at the meeting as well. So green space, a path, right? Some type of walkability, livability. Our parks, a recreation center that we don't have in Ward D. We have no park or recreation within there. Housing affordability, health care, education, some type of recreation or STEAM connecting to supporting our youth in the area, something to help us deal with the digital divide around broadband and Microsoft as a technology company, workforce development, environmental justice, legacy resident program. So as we experience all of this growth, our residents, our senior residents and residents who are on a fixed income, as the property taxes and values increase, they might not be planning or budgeting for that. The city of Atlanta, through their Beltline, the Invest Atlanta, have a legacy resident program, but that is generally funded by philanthropy because you're really giving a discount, right? You're giving a discount to residents. In our world, they call it a gratuity, so you get other people to fund it, right? So I just talked about generally some things that we could explore, but the threshold issue is this substation, right? And the location of it. Back to the question earlier about the different options on the reversion, right? So if the property is reverted to residential, yes, the ordinance says a substation within 200, but the condition that has been recommended is 500 feet. So you'll notice from their design that doesn't capture that recommendation that is before us. Let me back up a little bit and say when the council approved this in on July 6th of 2021, there was a condition in there that said if the building permit was not pulled within a year, was not issued within a year, so not applied for, but issued, gone through the process, then we have the right to revert it. In order for council to make that decision as to whether or not they're going to do that, it has to go through a process. We can't just say, oh, we're doing it without going through a process. So that's the process we're in.
Can I ask you one question before you go further? So it was established July 6, 2021, this ordinance, right?
No, the condition, the ordinance approving the rezoning.
So it's a clause, it was like a clause added to the ordinance?
Right, so there's 7 acres on this 138 acre site that they asked to be zoned from residential to industrial to ensure that there was an extensive buffer for the residents. So a substation and an entryway into a 138 acre development is not a buffer, right? So those 7 acres are a part of that area. And so we're not talking about the whole 138.
Okay.
You asked about the ordinances, so we are just now, we have hired a consultant to look at all of our zoning ordinances. They haven't been looked at in a while, like for decades.
My question is that clause, like what prompted it? Was it exigent to this Microsoft project? Is that something that was already pending? Like,
you mean when it was put into the ordinance?
And we said it was it
July 6, 2021,
right,
when it was
I'm trying to
approved?
understand what prompted it. Was it exigent to this Microsoft project or was something that was already addressed and pending?
So it was specific, so the condition is specific to this project, to that property. So it's not for all properties.
Gotcha.
So whenever a property is rezoned, we do an ordinance because we're changing something, right? So we have to do an ordinance. And the ordinance is specific to these 7 acres.
Okay.
And so, but in order for council to decide whether or not it's going to do that, we can't just say, oh, we're going to do it. We have to go through a process. And this is the process that we're in. So the option is to deny the reversion, right? And it stays industrial. Ask yourself this, the property was industrial. And last year, Microsoft asked us to rezone it to residential, which is the zoning that allows for a substation 200 feet away, right? Microsoft has been extremely concerned about this reversion since it started. There's been a level of resistance that we've had to work through that we are now working through. We have different people at the table, and some of them are here tonight. Terrence, I will say, he was an ally, and so I'm not saying that we're, happy that we needed somebody to replace Terrence, who was transitioned. But now I think we're having a real conversation. So there's the deny it stays industrial. And if it stays industrial, there's this thought that there is no way that they can put a substation there. I want you all, if you are on social media, to go to the City of East Point's Facebook page sometime this week and look at the work session recording from this Monday. The discussion about this starts at the 2-hour and 9-minute mark. And it goes on for about an hour. It's like a 3-hour plus meeting. And you will hear the discussion around all of this. During that discussion, Councilmember Gordon brought up the fact that Georgia Power has the local exemption, meaning they can put substations wherever they want. They don't have to comply with our local ordinances. And so there was a planning and zoning attorney there that you'll see that will come up and try to address that and indicate that that's something we need to look more into. So the attorneys are looking more into it. I talked to a Georgia Power representative who has confirmed that they do have local exemption. So what that means is even if our ordinance says it can't go there, Georgia Power may have the local exemption to put it there anyway. So this idea that if it stays industrial, that's like the silver bullet, it doesn't happen, not so sure of that. And if they have the local exemption, that happens. How many people in here received a letter from Georgia Power some months ago about wanting to survey your property? There were supposedly about 30 of you all who received it. They won't give me the list of names, but they said it's about 30 people. So even if Georgia Power has a local exemption to put a substation on that site, regardless of what our ordinance says, they can't get power to the site unless they transmit it from another source. The source that they were looking at was 5 miles away, which is why they sent the letter to around 30 of you, because they wanted to survey your properties to decide which ones they would need to ask you to then give them an easement to put transmission lines through your yard to get power to the site. That, you haven't heard any more from them on that because of this whole discussion around where the substation going to be located. But even if the substation is there, they're going to have to come back to you all if that's the route. And then if you don't decide to agree to enter into an agreement with them and they pay you to give them an easement to run electric transmission lines through your yard, they'll have to go to court and try to take your property through eminent domain. So that's still a possibility. So that whole, if it stays industrial, that's the reality of that, right? The other option that staff shared was that we defer and try to continue working to figure out a win-win. I've been very clear in my conversation with Microsoft. This substation needs to go as far away as possible from the residents, period. They say, how far is that, Mayor? I'm not giving you an amount because you heard the young lady, I believe it was you, somebody at the last meeting said a mile, right? So for me, if I'm giving you a distance right now, for me it's a mile. And we gotta try to get as close to that as possible, right? But we also have to deal with the realities of what our law says, what the state law gives Georgia Power this exemption, right? So we have to deal with all of that. But I will tell you that I feel like in the last couple weeks, we've gotten to a place where we're having real conversations with Microsoft about options. I feel like the resistance, the real resistance that we have been dealing with about making shifts and all of that, I feel like that has changed. And I feel like that is because of the reversion process. They're very concerned about that. Now ask yourself if it was the fact that we denied and they could put a substation there. Couldn't put a substation there, why would they be concerned, right? So we're all trying to figure this out because this is very complicated. And so I've asked them to even consider off-site locations. Why? Right? Like as we're looking at exploring other options, not just shifting a couple feet, right? Off-site locations. Again, what is being recommended from staff and the Planning and Zoning Commission says at least 500 feet. What they showed you is not that. right? So this is not, none of these decisions are really like just that cut and dry. And at the end of the day, we're gonna have to make a decision, but I'm always clear, and they're like, well, what options do you support? I'm like, well, we gotta go talk to the residents, and I gotta tell them what I know. And hear from them and get their feedback, because I'm not gonna commit to anything before we have those conversations, which is why we're here tonight. They asked me the distance, I said a mile. Whether we'll get the mile, I'm not sure, but an off-site location would be good. Like, the further away is what I prefer and what I'm advocating for. I feel like there's openness to work to that, to get the substation further away. During the meeting last night, also when you look at the work session video, you'll see that Councilmember Butler shared a picture of a substation on Piedmont and Paces Ferry, and indicated that there was a house and a park right behind the substation, as this is something that exists now. There's a difference between existing infrastructure and infill development.
Right.
And you can do the same thing wrong for 30 years, it doesn't make it right. And when you know better, you try to do better. I'm not making you all any promises, other than I'm advocating as strong as I can to ensure that we minimize the negative impact to your quality of life. This is complicated. This was something that was dropped in our laps. We were not at the table at the beginning. We didn't find out until I found out right before they were about to do a press release and they wanted to quote, and I was like, they're coming where? So a lot of decisions had already been made. The tax abatements, all of those plans, like we were not, but I've been talking with the Fulton County Development Authority Chair to say, look, we need to look at these processes. Like if you all are making these types of decisions to bring development into our area, we need to at least know about it. And a lot of those have NDAs and there's protected conversation. But we got to figure out how to protect it, but also include the city. So we can be at the table earlier to raise some of these concerns earlier, to be able to get input from the community. I don't have to tell you exactly what the project is. I can just come and have a conversation with you about what you think. You know what I'm saying? There's a way to get to it, but we need to be there earlier. So I hope I addressed your concern around how long the ordinances have been in place. Before I've been on council a total of 9 years at the end of this year. We haven't amended our zoning ordinances since I've been here and even before that. So the ordinances and things that we have are things that we inherited. We did amend our industrial ordinances when we put a moratorium in place. So we looked at some areas, but we're doing an overhaul, right? We're going to look at all of them, and that's going to take some time.
Are we going to have another meeting?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
We can find what you're talking, a lot of what we're discussed tonight, and what we will be discussing online, eastpointcity.com.
eastpointcity.org. So there is a link that they have. We need to try to link it to our page. There's a separate landing page that Microsoft has for a lot of this information. So we need to try to link it in that way. But the goal is, for whatever decision for me, is the maximum protection for you. The other thing I want to say is, so there's 7 acres in between the last home on one side and the development. That's what we're talking about for the reversion. We're not talking about the whole 138. But on the other side of those 7 acres is 131 acres that is industrial. So we're trying to think about protection. This is our one opportunity to think about this holistically, because whatever decision is made now, whether it's Microsoft and they intend to be here long term, but if something happens, somebody else come in, whatever that zoning is, if they meet those conditions of all of the uses within industrial, that's what can go there. Unless it's rezoned again, right? So trying to give you as much factual information as possible. I don't have all of the answers. I do feel like, again, Microsoft is exploring options that would move this substation further away. There's no guarantees, but know that that's what we're advocating for, and even an off-site location, right? But we will definitely keep you informed. I appreciate you all coming.
I do have more information.
I appreciate you all coming. I'm talking, Councilmember Butler. I do appreciate you all coming to all of the meetings that we have. I need you to continue to come. And I know there are a lot of people who couldn't be here. Shan, it was good talking to you. It was good to see you made it. I know there are people who couldn't be here. She didn't think she would be able to make it. People make sure you're informing your neighbors about what's going on.
Can I ask one more question? The ordinance number for would you happen to know of where residents can find it, the ordinance for the rezoning? Because I know some people who are not here tonight.
That's something that we can, send me an email, I can send what we approve.
Okay.
All our ordinances are online, but it takes a while for them to get codified. So I'm not sure if it's a part of Unicode yet, but I can send you a copy of that.
And the one with the clause in particular, 7 acres?
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
There is something I would like to add to that, because I want to give you all the information. The fact is, if East Point used its power, we would put a substation there too.
That's not true.
I'm sorry, I did not speak while you were speaking.
You're right, and I apologize for that, but we'll have some.
Sorry, repeat what you said, if East Point had its power, what?
Now, please continue.
I'm trying to ask you to repeat because I didn't hear
Yes,
what you said.
ma'am, the fact is, if East Point used its own power, there would be a substation there too.
Two substations.
No, not two. Whoever has the power, a substation must be provided. But there's some information that I want you to take away with you, because it's very, very important. That property, the 131 acres, was zoned industrial in 1988. Unfortunately, your homes were annexed into East Point in 2004. All of this predates us. So what we're trying to do is mitigate this unfortunate situation where you have industrial zone right next door to residential. That is hard, and it's tough, and it shouldn't be. I've been advocating against warehouse development since 2016 when I talked to State Representative Virgil Flood. Why y'all putting all these warehouses on the black side of town? I've been advocating for that before I was elected. So I know how you feel. The first thing that I heard when I came on council from the people in your community is that you're tired of these tractor trailers going down Ben Hill. That's what you told me. And they still go. We don't have enough police over there to stop them from going the wrong way. A data center is the only thing that has an industrial use where we can mitigate industrial traffic. I want you to have that fact. Because if we don't build this, then on that 130 acres, Amazon can come put a big warehouse where they're going to have all these tractor trailers coming down your street, and there's nothing we can do about it. Now I'm going to share something with you too. I'm confused about the zoning too. I don't know what to do. You had a valid question, and it's a question that I've asked. Who initiated the process? Because when the process was first started, it was to do one thing, but now it's looking like it's doing the opposite of what it was intended to do. So if you're confused, I'm confused too. And they want me to vote on this money. What I think the solution to this problem is to allow the experts, our city manager and Microsoft, to take the politics away so that we can really find a solution to mitigate the damage that's already been done to this community. I know how I feel when they put that food bank warehouse in my backyard. Only two people thought about what was best for the community, and that was me and Karen Renee. So when I tell you, I always look out for what's best for the people. So when you come back and you start to have these conversations, have all the information, because this is what the information is. Point blank, 131 acres of zoned industrial. When we rezone that property, we put a cap on what could be done. Now we have to go and look at rezoning this property again, and we have all these confusions. I prefer to do things nice, neat, and clean, where people can understand what you're trying to do. Period. So, yes, sir.
To your comments, I would disagree with the comment about taking the politics away, because these are our elected representatives.
Exactly.
we need y'all to fight for us. I don't want just the city manager to be involved. There needs to be oversight from the city council.
Well, I'll take that and I'll add to what we're talking about. I agree with that. But what I want to do is, here's the scale. On 0, we have no Microsoft. On 10, they could put their substation wherever they want. Right? We lose, they win. We win, they lose. How many people want to see a 5 where we got a clear win-win situation?
I agree, but I don't think taking you all out of the equation is part of the answer.
And so, to your point, I know that I and my Ward D colleagues have advocated very heavily on your part. But even to the point, it started before here. It started before Microsoft. It started with how are we going to get this warehouse from not being behind these people's yards and these tractor-trailer trucks to continue to come down your street. And so what we're trying to do is find the best solution with what we got. And I'm sorry about that, but this started in 1988 when the people who were in charge of East Point invited South Meadows to start doing that industrial development. Then in 2004, when y'all had moved out because y'all didn't want to be involved in the city, then you got annexed to East Point, and then we got townhomes and single-family homes. You bought these nice lots with these big land, and you wanted to be by yourself. Then here comes some people in 2004 that brought you into East Point. Now you got to deal with this. So I know how you feel.
No, you don't.
Well, sir, I apologize if you think I don't. I'm trying my best.
I don't think you do.
Okay. And I've
listened to you at every meeting, and you have adamantly tried to get all of us to believe that Microsoft is an angel, and they're not. They are not.
Sir, I'm listening.
I have been in my residence over 40 years, and when I first moved there, I had to go through all the racial stuff, because I was the second black to move in the area. And now, and then come the race train. And now comes Microsoft, and you're going to make us think that they're angels, and they're not.
I don't think they're angels
and
either.
I think that you have been disrespectful to your mayor and to your council members. You have the right to speak your piece because you will be elected.
Well, I'm sorry that you feel like I was...
Understand that you don't live in that area, and you will not live in that area. Right. They don't live in that area. When they leave here tonight, that community won't mean 10 cents to them, because they don't have to deal with it. They're doing a job that they're supposed or paid to do. You are not paid to do that job.
Thank you.
For Microsoft.
Yes, sir.
We have to make up our own mind, but we want the fact. We don't want one of our council members that's supposed to be representing us to try to make Microsoft an angel.
Well, sir, I'm sorry that you feel like Microsoft, I'm saying that Microsoft is an angel. What I've tried to do from this whole point is put lipstick on a pig. It's a bad situation, and I'm not trying to do that, but I want to give you all the facts. And I'm sorry that you feel that way. I acknowledge your feeling. However, I'm advocating for what can we do to mitigate the damage of having residential homes adjacent to industrial property. And that started in 1988. So that's what my advocacy is about. And it's not pro this or pro that. It's how do we lessen tractor-trailer traffic coming on Benny Hill. And I hope that you can respect that.
Is Ben Hill even rated for tractor trailer?
Right before you, Councilmember Gordon wanted to say something, I'm come right to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'm sorry, my voice is a little scratchy. But I do live in Heritage Park, so I do live very close to the site. Where we are right now is the land has been disturbed vastly. And what I think the mayor spoke to, and even Councilmember Butler, let's find common ground here, what they said is that continued conversation is going to be required. Come Monday, I can't poll votes, that's illegal, but I do feel, I have other colleagues, we have council colleagues in the audience too, and even Councilmember Robinson, when you watched that work session, he stated very eloquently the other night that East Point is open for business. The mayor has stated previously too that we want to do things in a smart way. That's not going to adversely impact our neighborhood. I live there. I've known many of you for quite some time, the Carters, for quite since I've been in office, almost 8 years. So please don't think that I don't understand, because I live right there. You know, Ms. Chantel, the faces in here I know. So I do believe too firmly that continued conversation is required throughout the duration of this project. These meetings, the input that you share, whether in these meetings, outside of the meetings, have been very helpful for all of us to go to the table. All three of us live in Ward D. And these two are at large. I'm Ward specific. So we have other at-large members of our council as well, but even our ward specifics, because we all vote on the same matters and they all matter to us. So we want you to know, at least I'm going to speak for myself, I desire to see continued conversation. I think that a moving forward approach in that regard is not to dismiss anything anyone said here tonight, because a lot of great questions were asked tonight. And you know Ms. Chantel is on her game, as well as the young lady in the back, to your children. I heard your concerns. I write those things down as you're speaking. So my desire is that we have continued conversations. We do have an item before us on Monday. There are 3 options: approve, deny, or defer. My question to a number of you is, we are where we are. What do you feel we should do? You don't have to answer right now, but I'm going to sit back after this meeting and I want to talk to you and hear from you directly, because a decision is before us on Monday.
Can you speak to the deferral option?
So, and you know, I know one question I had for our staff the other night was, if we defer it, for how long?
Yeah, so council will get to decide how long the deferral is. I mean, generally, we put a time frame on it.
Right.
Again, with the improved communication and collaboration that we've seen in the last couple of weeks with Microsoft, our city manager and our electric director is talking with them and their staff and the technical team, right? I don't believe in delaying just for delay, but I feel confident with the people at the table now that we're getting to real conversations, and that we have real decision makers in the room that can help with that, and so continued conversation will be helpful. Our electric director is here, and we did submit a proposal after having a fight to be able to submit a proposal for the power. And our proposal did not include a substation on the site. But we're not trying to talk about that decision, because this is not about us trying to get the power deal. Antitrust laws prevents us from, once they make a decision, that's their decision, right? That would have been about a 4% margin, we'll get a 4% franchise fee. That's water under the bridge. But the proposal that the city submitted did not have a substation on that site. So I wanted to clear that up. Also, several of you probably, people have told me, some of you have told me that you were receiving phone calls that Microsoft was going to sue the city for $12.5 million. Chris, I can't remember your last name, but just call him by his first name. Chris used to be in the legal department. I shared that with him and some others who were in the meeting. Terrence was at the meeting, Jonathan, and their eyes got big, because that's not their intention. And so this is not about fear. You don't have to be, we get sued, let me just say, we get sued. There are a number of lawsuits against the city. We have a legal department. If we got to go to court to fight for protecting you, I'm for that all day, right? So those types of calls, this is not about fear-mongering. I want you to understand your power and to advocate and to share with us what you want. So we have been wanting to have a conversation about community, one of these just specifically about community benefits with you, to add on to the things that you shared earlier, but this substation thing is kind of, you know, priority. But we will have that conversation, hopefully at our future meeting, our next meeting, because we'll be working through this. The young lady with the white hat on, I'm sorry, you had a question earlier, and I thank you for being gracious to allow me to have
Oh,
Councilman Ford.
no, that was great information, thank you. I just had, following up on a question from the councilman, the statement about if the Microsoft development did not go through, since it is still zoned as industrial. I had two questions. One, is Ben Hill Road even rated to hold the weight of a tractor trailer? And then two, is there any chance of rezoning that area from industrial to residential or mixed use?
Well, let me ask, the first thing is, tractor trailer is not supposed to be going down Big Hill Road.
Okay, that was my
They're not,
question.
and they do.
Okay,
That's a fact. They're not supposed to go down.
okay.
So
We
what
can-
is the Wokomo, because you have the, it's the Wokomo connector that Nagel was referring to. And then we have, is it Spring Meadow, what is the name? South
Meadow.
South Meadow, right, and they're industrial.
Yes.
So, but is that area right there still, is that Ben Hill yet, or is that still the Wokomo connector?
It's
Because that's where most of the tractor trailers
It's-
coming from.
Well, right there is Ben Hill.
So right there is Ben Hill. So that's a conflict.
Yes, and so one of the things that we've been trying to do to mitigate that issue, and I'm getting a little bit off topic, is years ago, I mentioned to the CEO of, the McDonald company, which owns 79. And they had done an internal memo to their drivers that you cannot make that right coming out of the park. That you can only make that wrong. I've had signs put up. It works and it doesn't. It's just, and I'm sure drivers change. And maybe we need to continue that internal memo going for quite some time, but it is such a headache. In Heritage Park, those trucks have the shorter entry signs. It's a headache. So we try, and in other parts of the city too, we have the same issue. But you're right, and we don't want any additional business is going to garner that type of traffic coming down. It's just not possible.
I just want to say that I recognize that Microsoft, they are a business and they're looking for business opportunity, and it's not personal to East Point for them, but it is personal for the residents, obviously. And just from a sentimental place, I understand, I'm relatively new to the community, but I understand how the older residents who have been here for decades, feel violated and they feel it's an intrusion. And I think that's why when they have these meetings, they want to know that there is a human sentiment attached to this, that it's not just a convenient, an opportune, space for them to build their business, but that you're having some regard for the residents. I think that's what they want to feel. And I want to tell you that I do understand what you're saying, that because it was zoned industrial in 1980, if it's not Microsoft, they are just the object, they're not the problem. Right. The problem is the legality, which is, it is legitimately an industrial space. So I understand what you're saying. If it's not Microsoft, it could very well be another industrial business. So it's like kind of the lesser of the evil. And I think the concern is that these conversations are kind of retroactive. We're on the back end, and we were not on the front end of this. And it looks like we did not do our part. And so when you say things like no to facts, it's like, well, give us the facts. I think that's what the sentiment is. We would have liked to know. I only saw very small signs about the rezoning, and like I said, being relatively new, I had to start asking questions. But if we are realistic, while they are very involved, I think we have to have some type of consideration for our elderly population. We need to make sure that the people who are not that politically savvy or not aware, we got to make sure that we're sending communication in a way that people can receive and understand, and then be able to take action and not say you just need to know. So if we don't know, then I think it is incumbent upon our leaders to make sure that we are receiving the information. They are getting the information proactively, as opposed to them sitting in this meeting and feeling like they have no power, or it's being taken away because it's something that's just going to happen and their voice doesn't matter, and that they're behind the ball. So I would like to see that improve, but I do understand where you're coming from. And that's why I said let's try to be forward focused. It looks like it's going to happen. So with going forward, we just are pleading with you to keep the human sentiment a part of these conversations, because they care about that community and they don't want it industrialized, but we understand that legally it can be. So what can we do to mitigate, right, the negative adverse impact on them in any way? Be it health, be it quality of life, we just want to make sure that the damage is as minimal as possible.
So we have, before you, sir, we have a young lady in front of you that, if you don't mind, I would love for her to speak.
I believe that the substation, if so, kids in the community need to be helped. We need our help, including my help and other kids' help in the community.
Absolutely, and that's what we're fighting. So, thank you. What's your name?
Simone.
Simone, how old are you?
8.
8? Well, you're gonna be, not gonna be, you're already a leader.
She wants a picture later.
Okay, absolutely. And I mean, you know, I'm not gonna be here forever, so if Simone's the next mayor, hey, let's go. So thank you, Simone. And the young lady sitting next to you, wanna share your name? Because we appreciate you all being here tonight.
My name is Sabrina.
Sabrina? Sabrina, how old are you?
8.
Hey, oh, you're both 8. Are you friends?
We're best friends.
Oh, BFFs. I love it. My daughter just turned 13. She has a BFF too, so I know all those dynamics right there. Thank y'all for coming tonight.
You're welcome.
Sir.
Yes, ma'am. So, you know, to the point earlier, because the concern seems to be around for folks that have been here for a long time, most of them being elderly. And I keep hearing this social media reference to get the information, but if we're really concerned, we should know that these, residents are not reading social media every day. They're not. They rely on flyers, the newspaper, phone calls, text message campaigns. Those are the things that work. I've worked in marketing, so I know how to, you gotta know how to target your community with the information.
So
and I'm not saying you don't, but
but point well taken. We are a multi-generational city.
Right.
So we have Simone and Sabrina here, right? And we got the whole gamut. So we need to be able to make sure that we're reaching all of our residents. And I live in Ward D, have been in Ward D my whole 12 years here. Rest assured that as your mayor, and whenever you can watch I encourage you to watch the work session. You can watch, whenever I talk, I lead with you. And whenever I'm gonna say the same thing here that I say in the meeting with Chris and Labria, right? Like, I'm consistent and I'm putting you first. And sometimes the reality of it is, if you're at the table and you said it, they're Microsoft, they're business, right? They have stakeholders and shareholders, they have people that they answer to. And when they come to the table, they come through that lens, right? You elect me. I tell them, we all have people we answer to. I answer to you, you my supervisors. And I have to be able to stand before you and tell you what happened, what did I do, what did I advocate, and where we are, right? And I have to tell you the truth. And that's what I'm gonna do every time. But understand, you can ask them, I'm pushing hard, right? And it's gonna be some resource needs and some things that they'll have to, but they're willing, I think, at this point. And so I'm hopeful. I said to the senior VP that I saw at the service, I believe we can get to a win-win. But my residents can't lose.
Are you able to disclose what you're inclined to do in regard to the voting?
So I only vote if there's a tie.
Okay.
And so I will come back to you. Again, I don't believe for delay just for delay's sake. And when they asked about this in a previous conversation and would we consider a deferral, I said it depends on what happens between that meeting and when we get to the meeting. If it feels like we're really moving in that direction and continued conversation will be productive, not just to do it, then yeah. And I feel like with the people we've been interacting with recently, that we can continue to have productive conversations.
Thank you all so much.
So, to the point about Ben Hill and the trucks, have you all tried to request help from the Department of Transportation, federal or Georgia, for traffic cameras? And I'm asking specifically to traffic cameras to monitor, the trailers coming through.
That's a good point. We should figure out if we can do that.
Yeah, we have a number of GDOT projects, and what we did talk about one time, I think this might have been when I was a council member in Ward D at large with Councilmember Gordon, increased enforcement, right? So tractor trailers aren't supposed to be on. How do we increase enforcement and start writing, write more tickets so people, that hurts.
The cameras do that for you.
The cameras could help, but they're not going to give us the ticket.
Oh, they'll email the ticket, they'll give the tickets.
Oh,
but
you're
they go
talking
based
about a
on
whole, the
Talking about the traffic count.
Yeah.
So usually, the federal system or the state should have a grant to help out.
I think there's some state review, you're right.
But the police department needs to do a study. So East Point Police needs to do a study so that you can have the data to request your grant for those.
Yep, we'll look into all of that. But this is great. And then also email us, right? And share information with us so we can get it to staff so they can look into it. Our charter prohibits us from getting into day-to-day operations, but we have a very capable city manager, Mr. King, that we all have a good relationship with who handles that for us. But I want to thank you all for your time. Mr. King, I'll turn it over to you to close out.
I was just saying, I see people leaving, people that make sure they sign in, getting back to the point that there's multiple ways to get in contact with folks. We want to make sure that we have the best way for you. So if you haven't signed in, there's sign in by the table, by the exit, please make sure you do it. Mayor,
Thank you, everybody, for participating tonight. Please give yourselves a hand. Thank you so much. Without you here, this is why we've done this, as you've heard before from our mayor and our honorable council members, Councilmember Gordon. Thank you for give a hand for her being here as well. Councilman Butler is here. Councilmember Josette Bailey, who's back there. Don't forget she's there.
I know Councilmember, yeah.
And also Councilman Butler.
Lance
Robinson was left out as well. So just thank all of them. As you see, they're very, very concerned about our community, and they want to make sure that you get your opinions heard. We'll be meeting, as the mayor said, we are meeting with Microsoft. I want to give them a hand as well. Thank you for being here. All of them, because they come from far and wide to be here today, and we are in negotiations and talking about what we can do. They're taking to heart what you're saying. So please sign the sign-in sheet before you leave, and we'll make sure that we'll keep you up to speed on what's going on. And thank you for participating.
Thank you.
Thank you.